Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. I don't know if my mic is on. Yes, it is on. Yes. Okay, good evening, everybody. Can I get a motion to go into executive session for the discussion of responses to requests for proposals of food services?
So moved.
Second.
For first and second, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries. We're in executive session. Okay, can I get a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
I have a first and second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. We're out of executive session. Okay, thank you all for being here tonight. And as a result of our executive session, I believe we've charged the central office. We have additional questions. We want to make sure we get this right. We are going to not have any action this evening at this point. We're not prepared to make a decision, and I apologize. We're not trying to belabor, but again, we have questions that need to make sure we have the right answers to make a solid, good decision. Can I just finish, please? Can I please just finish? I apologize for your frustration, but what we believe we'll get the answers to our questions by midweek this week. Our goal is to have a meeting on Monday the 15th to do a final vote. If our questions aren't fully answered, we know they will be answered by the 22nd. So we will have a final vote on the 22nd, worst case scenario, and understand where our future direction. And Mrs. Lavalette will be in communication with the food service union president as far as whether it is the 15th or the 22nd by the end of this week. Our goal by Wednesday, Thursday for sure is our hope, but I want to be honest and fair. So that is our timelines, 15th, 22nd, the very, very, very latest. So those are our two timelines. And hopefully, again, our goal is the 15th. Okay, that's any other comments from the board?
No, I think you've covered it. I mean, the
Okay.
board was very concerned about making sure that we are making, I think it's on. The board is very concerned about making the right decision for the school district. And we had some other additional questions that perhaps the administration did not anticipate. And we wanted to make sure that those were answered so that we are voting on a contract or voting on a change or voting on whatever we're voting on with all the information that we feel comfortable and that we need to have.
Thank you for that addition. Any other comments from the board? Okay, with that, I adjourn this meeting, and we will go right into operations. So you're up, sir.
All right. So the Operations Committee, we call the Operations Committee to order. And first thing on the Operations Committee is take consensus on the Operation Committee minutes from March 13th, 2017, starting with Roxanne.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, thank you. Moving on to the cafeteria report for April.
Yep. As you have in your packet, the April report shows that as of April, we're showing a $5,800 surplus. If you look at how many days are left, 33, the difference between the income and expense, we would probably make another $1,300, which gives us a profit of $7,000 roughly to the end of the year if everything goes right. If we add the Board of Ed assistance of $38,000 and the $119,000 that's in the our fund, we would have a surplus at the end of the year of 165,000. If you look at next year, and you just take what income we have this year, times 180 days, and then times the expense, times
Ed-
2.5%
Ed,
increase.
We don't have, the numbers we're looking at are much different as far
Right.
as what the profitability is. I'm showing
I don't know where you're getting 7,000 from.
for 16-17, unless it's the wrong month, that we would show a profit of only 6,000. I'm assuming that's what everyone else has, right? And then compared to last year was a loss of 94,000,
Right, it was 5,800
5,800. Okay,
that I have.
Oh,
that we do.
58. Okay.
5,800 profit,
Right,
okay.
yeah.
I thought you said something different.
no,
Yeah, it did sound.
Right? Okay. Okay.
oh, sorry.
We're all the same then, okay?
Okay, and right now, we have a profit of 5,800 versus a loss last year of 94,000.
Okay.
Okay. And if you look at the number of days left, about 33, times the difference between income and expense of $39.87 would give you an additional profit of $1,300, which gives you a total profit of about $7,100. Plus the $38,000 that we would not use as the Board of Ed assistance, plus the $119 that's still in our bank account, would give us a total of $165,000. Looking at next year, just moving everything over, we would, you have $9,012.05 income for every day, times 180 days would give us $1,622,000. Our expense on a daily rate would be $8,900 times 2.5% times 180 days will give us $1,655,000, or a loss of $33,000 roughly for next year if everything stayed exactly the same.
So $33,000.
$1,000 loss minus the 165, our net balance at the end of next year would be 132,000 if everything moved along as we have this year.
Any questions? Okay, moving on, take consensus on the cafeteria report. Roxanne?
Yes.
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 And yes, thank you. Moving on to the financial report.
Okay, just one second. Financial report. As you can see, we're showing approximately $530,000 surplus for the year. Again, it comes into many parts. First part is our contingency, which I list as $338,000 that was keeping. Remember, we transferred some of those items at the bottom, you can see. Our next item is benefits. We're showing a surplus of $335,400. That's consistent with each month. The next one would be tuition. Our tuition increased deficit to $1,063,979. With that, just to let you know, we did receive from the state our final, which is not included in our figures, our final excess cost reimbursement allotment. And which would be $1,840,907. What was budgeted was $1,945,565. Why the difference? Two, the threshold increased from $69,479 to $75,738. So every student who is under $75,000, we don't get reimbursed for. Last year was every student at $69,000. So that's a problem with that. Also, the state agency placement threshold went from $15,440 to $16,831. So there was a difference there of that. So with those two, it's not a good thing. We budgeted 73%. The actual percentage that the state gave everybody was 75.43%. We still lost $104,000, the difference between what they're gonna give us and what we budgeted. But the threshold is the one, and we have a number of children who are under the $75,000 threshold. I don't know if you wanna say anything or.
The only thing I did want to say is when we project, our excess cost reimbursement, when we're building the budget, we use, obviously, we have the current per pupil expenditures, so we times that by 4.5, and that's where we get our threshold. So when we did propose our budget, we were using the threshold at 69,000 and not the 75,000, because we didn't know what the PPE was gonna be reset at, or the per pupil expenditure. In terms of, so that's really where that deficit comes from, between what the actual reimbursement is to what we budgeted or proposed.
Transportation is showing a surplus of $333,000. Again, if you remember, we combined a number of routes to save that. We did not sacrifice anything for the children on their buses, in town or out of town. So, again, remember, we included that in next year's budget, about a $150,000 reduction in the transportation that we did. The next one is salaries. It brings us to two salaries difference. The one, we have certified and non-certified. The certified salaries, the combined is $356,000, and I'll tell you how that's, what that looks like. Two things, the salaries, the certified salaries are showing a surplus of $17,952. We did not, even though we did say have a little reduction in substitutes in the month of April, we did not reduce our proposed deficit for that account, because we're waiting to see what's gonna happen in May and June. So again, that deficit that we had in subs was $212,000. Again, what was happening, and we're, the year before, it was $547,000 total. Last year was $510. We're looking at $581. But again, April showed us a reduction, and we hope that it continues in May and June. That's one area that helped us. The next area in the non-certified salaries is showing us a surplus of $338,000. Couple of things enter into that agreement, into that number. One is we did not figure in yet the additional amount for the new clerks and secretaries contract. So we will have to figure that out, hopefully within the next couple of days, how much is retroactive and what it looks at further. We haven't done that. We did receive an additional $54,000 from a grant fund, so that's how we gained some money out of the SMART grant, and we're charging non-certified salaries of $54,000, so we gained that. The next one is the waivers. There was a MOU in the waivers, and that saved us an additional $80,000. So those were the two items that gave us $134,000 surplus, and one that we have not decided, we have not figured out yet, would be the new contract for clerks and secretaries. The next item is unemployment. It stayed about the same at $180,000. The next item is Medicare and Social Security. We did get the last third quarter 941s. We anticipate a surplus of $20,000. The next one goes up and down, and if you just 1 second. The next one with plant maintenance, we're projecting now a $30,000 surplus. Projections right now indicate that our gas from Eversource, we're gonna show a deficit of about $120,000. Our oil will show probably a surplus of about $30,000. Water and sewer, it's about break even. Electricity will show a surplus of about $140,000. So with that combined, it could be between $30,000 and $68,000 surplus, so we're still waiting. We did, with the cold weather, we did have some deliveries of number 2 oil in the last 2 weeks before, so that's that. And the final thing is that we're just finalizing, I sent out May 4th, they had, all principals and all administrators and all had to close out all of their open POs to make sure that if they don't need it, boom, it's gone. So we're looking at probably about 150,000 in those POs. So it could be $700,000 surplus, could be.
Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, take consensus on the financial report. Roxanne?
Yes.
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 And yes, thank you very much, Ed. Moving on to the presentation of the climate survey results.
As all of you know, every year, we, through our staff, our students, and our parent district climate surveys in all schools.
God help. Then you have to start feeding us. Thanks.
Melissa and I both co-chair
That's what we love you.
district climate management.
Thank you, Dale.
All right, so the first thing that we wanted to do is that we come up with the district, standards every year. What I wanted to share with you before we show this, our standards, is that we look at the next 5 slides. I'm not gonna read them out. I'm not gonna read them out to you. You could just take a look at them. The first 2 are over there. Basically, it's about shared vision and plan for promoting and enhancing, sustaining a positive school climate. The next few slides, as you will see, they go over the 5 standards. So,
We just wanted to review the National School Climate Standards with you briefly, so you know, we have our own district, strategic plan, climate committees that really, they go hand in hand with the National School Climate Standards.
In your packet, we just wanna let you know where we were. And there's the 5th one.
So in terms of our district climate strategic plan goals, which I steer the steering committee, which Shauna sits on with us, Melissa as well as sits on, and this is where our discussions come from in terms of how we develop our strategic plan budget for climate initiatives every year. So goal 1, all staff feel respected and included in the school community. Goal 2, all staff will feel connected to the professional learning community. 3 is district employees will model understanding of the code of professional responsibility. 4 and 5 are ones that we really focus on. All students will be educated in effective problem-solving skills so that they experience fairness in their interactions with all members of the school community. And we just asterisk to highlight, all students will be provided social emotional learning opportunities so that they will be productive, engaged, yielding a positive school climate. You hear me talk a lot about our social emotional behavioral screenings that we have in the district that we utilize to try to identify social emotional behavioral needs in students as early as possible so we can then intervene and provide intervention plans and hopefully teach them and strengthen their social emotional behavioral skills so we can avoid referral for special education or long-lasting difficulties in this area. We also, you hear responsive classroom initiative going on in all the elementary schools. You hear Second Step, which is a social emotional learning type of program and curriculum that many of our schools are using. And then goal 5, students will feel that they are safe, in a safe, healthy environment that respects their individual differences.
Okay, Okay, and we also do the survey, excuse me, I'm sorry. The administration of the school climate surveys, the state of Connecticut says to do it every 2 years, but in Wallingford, we do it every year. Students grades 3 through 12, parent surveys pre-K to 12, and the staff surveys pre-K to 12.
So in terms of the Connecticut State Department of Education district mandates, the purpose of doing your climate plans is to inform safe school climate goals and school plans for each school and for each of our special ed programs, Harvest Park, Arts Academy, and the integrated preschool. One goal focuses on strengthening students' social, emotional, and behavioral competencies. Elementary school climate plans now must include a goal focusing on enhancing parent involvement in the development of children's early literacy skills. And that actually came out of our focus monitoring plan last year, where we had to have a parent engagement goal as part of our focus monitoring plan to address early literacy in children. And updated school plans and goals are due to the district climate management team by October 2017. So schools get their school climate data, they review it with their school climate teams, and then they look at their current goals and they revise accordingly based on their analysis of their survey results.
So I just want to say, because I know we're going really fast and I know everybody's probably a little tired because it's late, but this climate survey, it does so much to inform, and I think I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is a really great feedback loop, not just for our parents and our students, but also to find out how our staff is doing. And this drives the plans that we get presented every year at budget season. So when we're looking at these suggestions from when you know how your budget breaks down by school, a lot of that comes from the feedback from these surveys. So I think, you know, I really appreciate you guys doing this, and this is really important information, and I'm glad that we're finally kind of getting little bits of the whole picture. But I just wanted everybody to understand that that's why they're presenting this. This really does, it drives our budget process in a real significant way.
And when you look at our strategic plan, district climate goals, and you compare it to the national school climate standards, they match very nicely. And that was on purpose. But Mike?
Yeah, when did these surveys go out?
They went the first week in March, and we extended.
Yeah, it changes a little bit every year. This year, I think it was the month of March.
We even extended it. We wanted to do it for 2 weeks this year, but then we extended it just to get more input from the different groups.
All right, so they went out the first week of March probably to all three groups, parents, students, and...
They do it in increments. First they do I don't know what was first, the parent, then it was the staff, then it was the student, or it was, I don't know the exact order.
All right.
But the committee decides as a group. We don't make that decision. When we meet monthly, the team decides when specifically they want that to go out. We don't.
Yeah, we do stagger the implementation time for each of the surveys.
Did the board get copies of those surveys? I'm just wondering.
The results.
The board did
No, the actual survey.
No, but we can get that for you.
And most of the
I would like you
questions
to have
are
a copy of them.
The questions are mostly come from the State Department of Education. We don't control that survey. The State Department gives us the question.
Right.
Each school, they can add up to 5 questions of their own based on what they want to find out in regards to their school.
Okay.
The 30 of them are basically, it's the state makes the question. We have no input. We cannot change it. It's all based on.
All right, so you have that second week of March, they go out,
Yeah,
they're collected,
yeah.
and then who analyzes the data? You?
Well, each of the schools gets their data, so their school climate teams at the individual
Each
schools
team- each school has a
analyzes it, and then from a management team or the district management team then meets, and we discuss highlights and areas of need from each of the representatives from the school. We look for trends across the district, and then we compile. It's the management team that really
Right, but
compiles
They go back to
district
their own
plans.
building, and they work on that to come up with their school climate plans, based on the results of their surveys.
And does the board ever take part, or are we ever privy to any of this stuff as you go along these steps? Or just the end when we see the goals maybe for each school, or?
Well, and the steering committee, we discuss We discussed like any trends that we've seen through looking at the climate data, and that's how we kind of then discuss on building our strategic plan budget for climate.
What's your, how was the, what's the word I'm looking for? How many did you get back, and what was the percentage
We have
that?
that.
It's in the,
You gotta get
it's in
that.
the.
Okay, your return
back
rate,
of
that's
that
what I was looking for.
present.
Yeah, that's the last slide.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so here are some highlights that we noted from our surveys. Some positive aspects of the student responses in grades 3 to 5. We were happy to see that students generally report feeling positive about their school and happy to be in school. Students generally report feeling liked by their peers, and they generally report that the adults in their school cares about them.
6 through 12 student.
Yep, sir.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and it looks really good. Do you also look at any of the negatives?
Yes,
Are there trends of negatives also?
yes, and we're gonna,
Oh, okay, sorry.
Talk about the areas to focus on.
Okay.
Students generally report that, this is 6 through 12 now, the students in 6 through 12. Students generally report that students are friendly in their school. Students generally report that they feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas at school. Students generally report that they feel treated fairly by adults, staff in their schools.
okay. So then, for students in grades 3 through 5, areas of ongoing focus that we think is important is to continue to implement social emotional learning opportunities, develop student competencies in these areas. As the board's been made aware, behavior, particularly elementary schools at early childhood, this year has challenged us more than ever before. The board's been generous enough to support our initiative with additional BCBA time and behavior text to work with our staff and our students and our parents to implement data-driven behavioral plans to strengthen students' skills in those areas. So we will continue to support PBIS programming at the high school level, responsive classroom programming, and then the schools will go back to their individual buildings and with their school climate teams and really individualize more what that might look like in their building based on their analysis of their data and their need. And then school-based climate committees will analyze specific school climate data and develop specific plans for schools by October 17th, because that's when their updated goals and their updated plans are due to the management team at that time. And we'd be happy to share those
Can I
plans
just ask
with
a
you.
general question? Do we find that across our 12 schools, the participation rate for whether it be student, parent, or staff is fairly consistent? Or do we have pockets? How does that fare out?
We sometimes have pockets.
I would like to know that information as well. If you're giving us a little bit more information, like, I'd like to see that survey, what the surveys look like for each of the 3 groups. But I don't want to make a ton of work for you guys, but would it be easy for you to?
We could get that
Yeah,
to you.
if it's easy, again, I'm not trying to drive you crazy, but.
So just so I'm clear, because we can get the participation rates across each of the schools. We just did a district overview
Right,
tonight.
I saw that you've got, I peeked ahead and I saw your district numbers and, so yeah, if it's easy to get, I would like that.
Yeah, we could get that.
Hold on one second. Tammy?
Roxanne, that's
Yep.
actually a question that came up at the Highland-Yalesville PTAC this year.
Okay,
And families were, I guess I was guilty too. I thought if I filled out one survey, it counted for all my children, but it's really specific per school. So if
Gotcha.
you have 3 kids in K to 2, 3 to 5 middle
You need to
school,
do 3.
survey.
Well, that sort of does make sense in a way.
But I think that there was an awareness factor.
Okay.
That families didn't know that, so I think like Highland got triple what Yalesville got. And it was
Gotcha.
just because they didn't understand. So there was a concerted effort, and actually they took volunteers from high school to try and get more people to do the surveys at open house and parent conference night. So it's been
Yep. Well, that makes sense, Tammy, because when I look at, again, I'm not trying to jump ahead of your presentation, but, you know, when you look at the parent percentage is ridiculously low, but that could explain why that's low. If you had multiple children in the district, you may have only done one, and that you might have eliminated your opportunity, yeah, your numbers got reduced as parents. That makes sense. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay.
Area of focus for 6 through 12. Ongoing review with students of importance to be responsible in communicating through social media. Continue to implement social and emotional learning, opportunities to develop student competencies in these areas. And again, by October 2017, they have to have their climate plans in.
At this level, there is a focus on responsible use of social media. That came out in the data. And then obviously, you're going to see a theme of working to strengthen kids' social emotional skills. Okay, some positive aspects of our parent surveys that we noticed. Parents generally report that they feel welcome in their child's school, which made us happy. Parents generally report that they feel that there are trusted adults in their child's school that their child can go to for help. And parents generally report that they feel satisfied with the response they receive when contacting their child's school with questions or concerns. And then ongoing focus, obviously, will always be to continue to develop opportunities at all levels to collaborate with parents for the benefit of their students and to increase parent engagement and participation throughout our schools.
So can I just ask a clarifying question about the term generally? I'm struggling with that word. What does that mean? I know what the word general means.
Yeah, there were
but
often,
in
most
this
of the
application-
responses had most of the time, all of the
Yeah,
time,
so are
most
these
of the
generic
time,
terms that you-
sometimes, or
Oh,
none of the
okay,
time.
see, that would be helpful to know. So could we go over that again?
Most of the responses, in terms of generally, you know, there's 4 options. I think it's all of the time, most of the time, some of the time, or none of the time.
So where does
So we
generally
really
fit in?
looked at all of the time and most of the time with very little on none of the time.
Okay, so to get the generally category, most or all, you had to get 50%?
Oh, no. It was, I think 75% or 80% was our.
I'm struggling with the generic nature of the information I'm getting. I don't mean to be difficult. That's what I don't, it's hard for me to I'm getting nods. I don't know what my right words are, but it's like, I don't know if, are we talking about 10 people, 1,000 people? You know, that is, you know, percentages I work with percentages all day long. And so if I'm working with a number of 100 or 1,000, my percentages get skewed very dramatically. So it's hard for me to understand. These are all great results, and I'm happy, but I don't know what we're talking about, really.
We're talking about 21%, you know. You saw your
Right, okay, right. So I go back to that.
of parents
Okay, so
was 21% across the district of the parents responded to the parent
Right,
surveys.
which
And
could
of
be
those
a misnomer.
21%, we
Right.
reviewed all the parent responses, and in terms of the positive aspects of the parent responses, most of these have a question attached to them.
Uh-huh.
So if their response was most of the time or all of the time with very little response rate on none of the time, we thought it was worth highlighting.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
Would it be helpful, Roxanne, and I
Yeah.
don't know if you guys can do this, but to see the 30 questions and then the response rate for each one of the categories?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, again, I'm not trying to make a ton of work here, but it's just very hard that, I don't even know what the survey looks like. So, number one, that could,
There's
Right.
16 different surveys, so we can
Oh,
give you
wow.
all 16.
So why are there
Well, what we was given
16?
is
You
that's-
could give but they're gonna wanna know, I would wanna know, you would wanna know the 5 different questions they asked too, right?
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. I feel like I'm getting some results, but I don't know
I agree.
everything that went into it. So the fact that there's, I'm sorry, how many surveys?
Well, there's
16?
different types. because
Right,
We had
ba-
EP, arts, we did all of them.
Yeah.
that-
So
I agree.
I don't know what this, yeah, that doesn't help me to it sounds nice, but you're right.
Yeah, so I guess what happens is there's 30 standard questions that go out to all of our programs. And that's cross-tabulated to see what the overall feel of the whole district is.
Okay.
But each individual school or program has the option to add 5 additional
Right,
questions,
which
which
we-
is why we have the 16 different surveys. So it's not
Gotcha.
16, 30
It
questions.
could be
There is a difference between grades 3 through 7.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what I figured.
Yes.
Yeah, so they even are different. as
Those
well.
have stratas,
Exactly.
yeah, that makes sense. That does.
But so what I'm thinking might be helpful is kind of what we had with the student survey that we had Celeste do, that report where you knew that out of 84 students, let's say, 12 answered category 1, 15 answered category 2, depending on how that would work out.
I don't
Something
know
similar.
how I'm not trying to make you drill down to a level that, again,
What we
it just.
can give you is we can give you each school's response rate to each question on each survey. So you
You
will
already have
see-
that tabulated. That's done.
We just,
That's what you gotta send out.
That would be helpful. And then that helps us to understand where their pockets are of concerns
We
for,
broke it down, each question, each answer, most of the
Yeah.
time, some of the time, you'll be able to see
I-
each school.
yeah, you might see trends that way too, that would be helpful, but, yeah, if you have that information, that would,
yeah, this
Hold on,
was
Rob.
intended to be a broad overview for the district. The schools, I mean,
yeah, thanks.
yeah.
I
get it. And I
understand.
apologize, we can get that more specific data to you.
Well,
Hold
and
on
this-
one sec. Mike has a question.
No, I was just gonna say, I think we got a little hung up on the word generally.
Yeah.
So
I
just-
did, I don't mean to
I
be
don't wanna speak
difficult.
for somebody, but, you know.
I was, sorry.
I'm interpreting that to mean, most parents
Yeah,
report.
well, now we know that, yeah.
You'll be able to see what.
You know what? I wish I put most parents instead of parents generally.
No, but now I understand how that got defined, because it's
The
they-
reason I
the way
didn't put
they
most
answer.
parents, because most of the time was one of your answers, and I don't
Right.
know, it just,
Okay, thank you.
We good with generally?
I am now. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to be a pain in the neck,
Any other
but.
questions? No? Okay.
Here's the staff one. Some positive aspects of the staff's responsibility. Staff generally report that they like to come to work each day. Staff generally report that they feel welcome at their school. I'm joking.
I'm having
joking.
fun with me
That was
now,
his
and
word.
that's all
As
good.
we were fighting last night on the phone, Sunday nights. No, I'm just joking. Staff reports that parents and guardians are made to feel welcome in our schools. And here's the areas of focus. School-based climate committees will analyze again by October of 2017. They'll come to us and we'll talk about that, but they'll come up with those decisions at their building. Continue to model expected behavior for students to strengthen the development of students' social and emotional competencies.
and then finally, these are our district global view of participation rates. Parents was 21%, students grades 3 through 12 was 64%, and our staff was 48%. We can get you by school.
Do we know the participation from 3 to 5 and then 6 to 12 percentage?
We combine them 3 to 12.
We can break that down. We can break that down.
So how was it presented to students? I mean, I'm thinking you got a captive audience. Why don't you have 100%? How does that work out?
Each building does it the way they feel best meets the needs of the building.
Okay, so it's clearly optional. How do you present that to a third grader, I guess, versus
Well, that was what I
an
had.
11th grader? You're going to present it differently. I don't know.
Carrie, could you just comment on how?
Yeah, how you did it, and I know we have.
At the 3-5 level, I'm not sure 6-12, but 3-5, classroom teachers, homeroom teachers would give the surveys to their homeroom classrooms. So that way they had the most familiarity with the students, they would review the question, and the students would take it. So in terms of participation rates at the 3-5 level, if students were absent, they wouldn't be there obviously to take it. Although sometimes I will say, they might select the wrong grade that they're in, because the students are taking it. So you might have a larger amount of third graders than fourth graders, but generally, they do it with their classroom teacher.
Yeah, that would make, yeah, I would think you'd have almost 100% participation, 3 to 5.
Given daily attendance,
Yeah.
those are the only students you'd
Sure.
be missing.
Any comments from middle school?
At the middle school level, it just happened to be social studies that volunteered in both, at Deck Household in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So the teacher just kind of, on that day, had the Chromebooks and had their kids take it. So same thing, if a student was absent, they didn't necessarily hunt them down, but we had a high participation rate because they did it in class.
Did all social studies teachers do it?
Yes.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
How about in high school? What class was that done at high school?
Actually, in high school, it was through the English teachers.
Thanks.
Can we actually do more specific school-based individual data, participation rates?
What about distribution and marketing for the other stakeholders, primarily like the parents? You had mentioned like PTAC, I think it was talked about. Any other like methods that you kind of market or
I can answer that
push
for
this?
parents. So for parents, we got something, a notice at home that said, take the survey. And then if you ever go onto the school website, which I think most parents would do, there's this wonderful pop-up that every time you
Those are good
change
for
the page, it
pop-ups.
tells you to take the survey. So that was there.
I wonder if maybe for like the younger students, like the 3 to 5, if you could send something home with them to their parents to kind of encourage,
They do.
We blast it out to the parents, and then, we invited all students that came during our parent-teacher conference night, the ninth one, and we set up Chromebooks for parents to do it in the main lobby.
Oh, that's great. Did you find like a high like response rate by doing it that way?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And like for, just for our PPS programs, we will email blast, we will phone call, we'll offer paper, and then we'll input the responses for them. So, and you're ongoing, because you monitor what your response rate is, so.
Pat, do you have a question? Oh, I thought you did. Okay, Mike. you
But,
just-
but it's a window. The window to, is like, right, is like 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
So we extended it.
Right.
Yeah, so we can get the data back to the schools so they can meet and then review it, analyze it, and then go on their plans.
Now, I notice it doesn't say, I see you have areas of ongoing focus. Now, is that to imply that those are the areas where there might have been some negative responses?
Yeah, well, there's some areas where we would want to look at and.
Because it really doesn't come out and say negative responses, but I'm just assuming that's what that means. In conclusion, I guess, I like to say that I think this is a very telling, I think this is a great idea, this climate survey.
too.
Because this is what makes our schools tick. We need to know, to get a pulse of what everybody thinks is going on. And as a school board, sometimes we don't always hear that. We just don't, unless unless a parent comes up to us and says something, which many don't. This gives us a pretty good idea of what's going on, and if all our efforts and the efforts of the administration are working. So I really think this is a good idea. So I apologize for some of the questioning and the things that we're looking for, but I think it's important, I really do. This is a very good way to get a pulse on what's going on in our system, other
Yeah.
than money,
Yeah.
budgets.
Break down the questions,
Yeah.
you'll be able to see each question, percentage broken down, how many said this, so that's very telling.
Yeah, and I respect the fact that we do it every year versus the state requirement is every 2 years. So the fact that we're doing it every year is, I think that's a statement about us as a district. So.
Sean?
And we've done it for a number of years, correct?
Well, in the past, we used to do something similar,
Okay.
a long time ago.
Right,
Because,
right.
I don't want to take Ms. Lavallette's position, but again, this is part of teacher evaluation. This came out of that initiative as well as prior to that, so it's all connected. So we've been now doing this for at least, I would say, 4 years. if not longer. But again, as was just mentioned, the district had made the decision to do it annually rather than the minimum of every other year.
And so I guess my question is that, are we using the same questions every year? I mean, obviously the 5 probably change.
Yeah, they're 5, yeah.
Yeah, but,
So you can compare responses.
so I mean, I think it's a really good, especially we have 4 years under our belt, next year we'll have 5. It's a really good way to see whether or not some of the things that we've identified as ongoing areas of focus are being adequately addressed. Because we're able to go back and say, oh, 2 years ago, this was an area that we really needed to look into because people were answering negatively. But look, 2 years later, we have this positive answer. And so we can see that the things that we're doing to make improvements are having a positive effect.
And then when we're at the steering committee discussing district climate budget and how can we support students, social emotional growth or their ability to handle stress, that's where the things like yoga or mindfulness comes in. 'Cause
Yep.
we've seen some benefit from it with small pockets in the district that we utilize that kind of.
Pat?
Yeah, I noticed 52% of the staff did not take the survey. Is there any underlying reason why? I mean, I know I was a teacher, you get busy, this and that, but was there teachers that just said, I'm not doing this?
How do you answer?
I
Oh, you
couldn't
didn't hear
even
about it, Mike.
guess why. I mean, maybe we can do a better job providing them more opportunity to take the survey.
All right.
But
Any other questions? Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, presentation on the middle school schedule.
Tonight we have our middle school administrators here, and we also have in the audience one of our staff members who has worked with us in a capacity of consulting on this, Julie Foss. I'll have the administrators introduce themselves just for the camera because I know that it's important to do that, and then they'll take over the presentation.
Todd Snyder, principal of Dag Hammarskjöld.
Joe Piacentini, principal of Moran Middle School.
Dan Bologna, assistant principal at Moran Middle School.
And Christine Melita, assistant principal of Dag Hammarskjöld Middle School.
So good evening. Thanks for having us present tonight. We're pleased to be here and sharing with you what's been a culmination of a lot of work, not just this year, but over the last few years in terms of talking about schedule. And while that might seem like a dry topic, we're really talking about the day-to-day of our kids and our staff. So this is a big topic. And I would like to point out Julie Foss, who's serving Wallingford as a consultant this year and has done a great deal of the work that's gone into this. We thank her for being here as well. And while this has been a joint effort, I wanted to give her that shout out. So that being said, I want to just tell you a little bit about the process, a little bit of a historical analysis too. You're probably familiar with SWOT and what that stands for: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And over time, over the last 4 years now, the schedule has come up as a threat to meeting students' needs. And the list of reasons why it's not working, the lack of time for counseling groups, intervention means fewer encore classes for students. Our classes are about 45 minutes, 47 minutes, and it's really not enough time to engage in deeper learning. I don't think there's probably a teacher, I can speak for Moran as well, that hasn't had one lesson this year, at least one, where they didn't think to themselves, geez, I really needed 20 more minutes or a half hour. So that too has come up as a threat there. There's been a lack of opportunity to provide interdisciplinary learning opportunities. And especially with mastery-based learning, there hasn't been that kind of time to delve deeper into that, and we feel like this schedule meets mastery-based learning and all of the elements that go into it. Collaborative time among staff. I think time and time again we have always wondered how do we get more time into the day, and this schedule provides that. When we're talking about transitioning from middle school to high school, that's a really big piece, and we feel like this schedule that we're presenting tonight is a good marriage between middle school and high school. There's a lot of special schedules that we have for different things. There's one for advisory. There's obviously ones for early dismissals or late arrivals. There's one for a late arrival and an advisory. And we have a lot of these different schedules. And we hope that through this schedule, it would eliminate the need to have special schedules for things.
So as Todd mentioned, this has been a long-standing process for us. We started, as you can see, back in the fall of 2013. We formed a committee between both middle schools. It had administration involved, obviously, several members of our teaching staff across our core, our support staff, our on-core staff, and then at certain points we involved members of the central office team, as well as we had parent members as well involved in this committee. We took a lot of time. We conducted a lot of research. We had subcommittees that went out and looked at schedules within the state of Connecticut that were out there, schedules obviously outside of Connecticut, and then we even had a group looking at international schedules. We had a group of us go to a NELMS conference on scheduling, and so we sort of exhausted what's out there. And to be honest with you, if there was a great schedule that worked for all middle schools, everybody would be doing it. We did not find that, obviously. There's probably thousands of different schedules, and some of it hinges upon size of the building, student population, hours in the day. We obviously have a slightly different length of day as other schools do. So taking all this into account, what we did is we found two workable options that both middle schools agreed upon that looked like they were in good shape. That was back in 2015. In that spring, we took a marking period, and we piloted that schedule. That gave us a lot more data specific to Wallingford, specific to our needs, our student needs, and then what the teaching staff saw as needs that our students would benefit from. That sort of can tell you, at this point, being in 2017, how long we've taken with this process. Unfortunately, when we finished our pilot, there wasn't really an agreed upon schedule that we all could say was the perfect schedule, was the right schedule to move to at that time. We did not want to just jump into a new schedule just for the sake of doing it. We needed to be something that would be good for all students at the middle school level in Wallingford. So at that point, we put things sort of on hold.
Joe, can you just go back to, you don't have to.
Of course, yeah, sorry.
When you say lack of teacher commitment, that kind of, I don't think you mean what it says, I don't think anyway. It's just that they didn't feel like they were prepared enough, or it was too quick a decision to be made. They couldn't, it sounds like they just didn't want to do it, which I don't think is the case.
No, that is definitely not the case. When it says lack of commitment, it's lack of commitment to the model that we had piloted, that it was a commitment to that model being the best model for students. So when they say lack of commitment, it's not lack of commitment into implementing it or doing their job. It's rather that being the best student schedule to introduce to our students. Again, even though we kind of put things on hold at that point, it didn't stop becoming an issue. It continued to come up when we looked at our SWOT analysis again. It came up in department meetings. It specifically came up a lot in curriculum meetings that we had. PTAC, PTO, parents, students would always talk about it. Both student governments, that's our largest voice of our student population, definitely kept coming up as a concern. Our current schedule doesn't provide a lot of opportunities for enrichment. It doesn't provide a lot of opportunities to bring students to the next level or to help those students who need to be brought to that next level. It's very prescriptive, which worked at the time, but now we have to evolve, and that's sort of what we kept hearing over and over again. And as Todd mentioned, with our timeline to implement MBL, it became a concern for us. This is a good step for us in the right direction. So in the fall of 2016, 3 new administrators to the team. We decided to reinvigorate this process, to look at a new middle school model. And as Todd said, Julia, being very, very familiar, obviously, with our middle school model, helped as a collaborator for this process. We met numerous times. We looked at the alignment of schedule, and the number one thing is right there: student learning. That was at the forefront of every single conversation we had, of every single decision. We have about 1,400 or so students at the middle school level that we were servicing, so that was really what our focus was. We looked at longer blocks of learning time. We looked at class size, which Class size, just to be clear, can't be changed by a schedule itself. There's more that goes into it, but at the same time, the schedule sometimes prohibited us from doing those next step things that we needed to do to reduce the class size at the middle school level. And then, of course, we live and die by the teaming model. We love that model. We think it's very appropriate for our students, so we wanted to make sure we preserve that model. We did have to adhere to the teacher's contract and look at things like prep time and planning time and the amount of classes that could be taught. We looked at the availability of time where we can give whole building access to students. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the future, but I mean, later in this presentation, but we really wanted to look for a time where the whole building would be available for student enrichment. And that enrichment could be for those middle level learners that just need that next step, for those high level learners that need to be pushed higher, for those students that are struggling on a certain concept that just needed a little bit of remediation. And this way, we weren't forcing students and parents' hand in staying after school, coming in early from school, some of the things that we weren't finding everybody has time for with the busy lives that they have. So we were really looking for a period of time where everybody could be accessible. And then beyond that, we can do some things that we don't offer to students, some chances for students to put time into some passions they have, for staff to put some time into some passions they have and bring that to students. So that was one of the big things we were looking to add. And as Todd said, we have so many special schedules. The amount of instructional minutes we have currently can't really be truly represented because we take so much time from different places to meet all the different things we have going on. And then lastly, we looked at, obviously, instructional minutes comparable with our district reference group.
Okay, so here are some opportunities that we have here. We have an addition of 176 encore instructional minutes, in addition to a reduction of 246 core instructional minutes. Now, that might seem like a lot, but what we're talking about when you disperse 4 hours of time
I don't know
over
what
the course.
encore or core, what does that mean?
Core classes are English, math, social
Yeah.
studies, and science.
What's
That's core.
encore?
And world languages in there. Encore is the other
All your
courses, tech ed,
Okay.
family consumer science, unified arts is
Gotcha.
another way of saying that. So each grade has a split lunch once in the 3-day cycle. And I think we're going to be rotating that throughout the year. We're at least one grade. It's not optimal, but there will be a split lunch, which means that in the course of a 3-day cycle, there will be one class where they'll start the class, for a certain amount of time, then go to lunch, and then come back to that class. While that's not optimal, it's going to be shared, and that had to be done with the construction of the schedule.
So Todd, is this what our current structure? Is that what,
No,
or what are we,
this is
what are
the
we looking
opportunities
at?
that the new schedule provides.
Okay, so, okay.
So that we're getting into the details of
Okay,
it here.
so, all right.
Shouldn't we first see what the new schedule is before we learn what the benefits of it are?
Sure, and I believe that's the next slide.
My understanding.
Sure. So here's, what's that? Oh. Okay. So this is just a look. There's about 13, 14 pages or so in this document. So this first slide here is just a look at the 6th grade. So as you can see, there's 3 days as opposed to the day A through G that we have now. Makes it a little more simplified. But on day A, you can see there's 5 periods for each day, and I can actually bring it down a little bit.
Yeah. So,
This might be a better visual.
I mean, I've been out of the middle school arena for a long, I seem to be a pain tonight. I don't know if I apologize. Tonight, yeah, well, so that's what my husband would say. So the current structure is an A through G.
A, B,
Could
C,
we
D,
just
E, F,
know
G.
what that means? So every day you have an A day, a B day, C day.
Correct.
So through G. And so what you want to change it to is just an A through C?
Correct.
Okay. So every 3 days, your schedule will repeat itself?
Correct.
Okay.
Currently, it's an A through G schedule with 7 periods rotating throughout each day.
7
It's
periods through each day, okay.
We're keeping that where 7 periods rotate through, but as you can see, and it is out of order here, it'll rotate through twice. Actually, Yes, if I said, now I'm getting confused. But day A, as you can see, it starts with homeroom, as it does. But period, it is out of sequence, and we had to do that for the lunch purposes. But as you can see, each class is 68 or 69 minutes and starts with period 4, period 6, then lunch at period 5, and then to period 3 and period 2. So there are 5 periods in a day. And then it continues on 6, 7, 5, 2, 1, and then goes through the other periods in the cycle.
So first off, if I were to show you the model of our current schedule, the A through G, it would look equally confusing. There's no great way to read this because when you rotate a schedule in, so our current model is there's a new class every first period. So on an A day, you start with period 1, on a B day, you start with period 2, and it rotates that way. One of the things that the committee prior to us wanted was a rotating schedule, so you'd see kids at different times of the day, and that is the fact that at middle level, our students change. Basically, lunch really determines who they are. It's just a fact of life. Yeah, once lunch hits, it's a whole nother kid. So that being said, what we did here is we went from 45-minute periods to either 68 or 69-minute periods, and so we had to basically what you're seeing is a dropping of periods. So we're still doing a 7-period rotation, but the next 2 periods will come in the following day. So that's why the first day you only see, I think it's five teaching periods you'll see, and then so on and so forth. If you just ignore the minute order, you'll see the benefit is we went from 45-minute classes to 68, 69-minute classes. That's a nice meld. So when in an earlier slide, we talked about transitioning students from middle school to high school. So at the elementary school, if I'm not mistaken, in any of the elementary, you guys do occasional 60 and 90-minute teaching blocks, correct? Yeah, right. So our students were going from 60, 90-minute periods down to 45-minute periods, and at the high school level, I think it's 85, 80, around that range. So we were putting kids through an unnecessary roller coaster. This is sort of a middle ground for those students. Now they go from a 60, 90-minute language arts math block to a 70-minute middle school block, and now they're a little more prepared. And when I do, I've heard from the freshmen and sophomores when they come back to us, sitting for an 85-minute instructional period, however you set up that lesson, is a huge shock when you're going from 45 minutes and constant movement at the middle school level. So we felt that this was developmentally appropriate and a better transition for our learners, so we're getting them ready in those 3 years for what they are experiencing, and we're not breaking off from what they've been doing for 6 years now. But any specific questions when you look at this?
So you're able to fit everything in? I mean, you reduce it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 periods in a day?
It's still 7 periods. We're not
It's
reducing
7.
any of our offerings. We are not at this.
Right.
We're still offering a 5-man team, which is the 5 core subjects that we have in Wallingford, and we're still offering 2 encores. We're still in the process of scheduling, but we're not dropping any of the offerings we have. So it's not impacting what we're doing that way.
The difference is right now for core academic subjects, kids see their core academic teachers once a day for 7 days in a row. Now they're seeing teachers 2 out of every 3 days.
Okay.
So there is one day they're not going to.
But they've got that extended time period. So you're going for quality versus quantity. Is that?
And again, at the high school with the AB schedule,
Right,
it models
mirrors
a
that.
similar, not exactly the same though.
Karen?
Okay, so the lunch period, give me some more information on that. Is it shortened or lengthened, the same amount of time as they're getting for lunch now? I understand that it's splitting, you go to lunch in between, you start out in that class, go to lunch and then come back. But have you built in things, because as we know, transition from lunch is, well, so you say, but how is that going to work? Is it?
So we did shorten our lunch waves. We currently are working under a 30-minute lunch wave. With this new schedule, we go to 25-minute lunch waves. So that gained us some instructional minutes back into our classroom. We do have right now, as Mr. Votto represented, we do have 2-minute passing times. We're going to sort of look at that and see how that stands. Most of our classes are very close to each other. Being in a teaming model, the majority of our core classes are right there. And when they transition from encore, sometimes those are close as well. But we do have to look at the transition from lunch and see what we lose or gain in that transition, and maybe we'll have to make some adjustments the following year. But at this point, we're looking at tweaks rather than wholesale changes, but that is something we've definitely talked about as a committee.
And just to clarify, not every class is split by lunch. It's for one one grade at a time per trimester. So our thinking is if the 6th grade has it the first trimester, one of the classes has a split lunch. The second trimester, then the 7th grade can do it, and the 3rd, the 8th can do it. So it's really a minimal amount of time that the teacher and the class will have that split lunch class. It's not as though it's the same class all year, all the time.
Right, because
I-
I saw that as being a problem for instructional.
Correct.
I would just like to support the administrative team on the lunch reduction in time, because I know that in our administrative meetings, they have done and they've collected appropriate data, and it's not hard to collect, is that within the last 5 minutes of lunch, that is when most of the discipline issues in lunch have occurred. So the data supports reducing the time so that there's not that unnecessary need for a child to get in a challenge. But I also just heard, and I want to make sure that everyone hears this too, that this is something that the administrative team at both schools wants to look at. So if it's necessary to add that time back, not this year, but going forward in the future, they would revisit that. It just was such a concern that came up year after year after year on the part of our administrative team. And I believe that it impacts even just the teachers in the next class, because if a student gets in trouble or has a challenge that last 5 minutes, they're not getting to that next class on time. So because they're in the office, because the administrators are doing lunch duty, they can't, they have to finish up that responsibility. So I know we get concerned, but also the cafeteria time at the elementary school is 25 minutes, which we know is sometimes challenging, and we'll continue to work with food services to shorten that time in line and such. But I think I understand and I do support why they went in that direction, because I think it added additional challenges that were potentially not necessary.
Mike?
In addition to that, though, some of the challenges that students have also takes place during that passing time. What this schedule does is reduces the amount of passing time. Instead of 7 or really 8 different transitions in the course of the day, we're really reducing it to 5. And the research does show that those disciplinary possibilities do take place during that time.
Mike, you got a question?
My first question is, this is not slated to start this fall, is it correct? It is? Okay. Lunch, I understand what you're saying about 25-minute lunches. I taught middle school for 40 years almost. However, that only works if the kids were able to get in and out.
Yeah.
Well, that was
That's what I
my
thinking.
concern.
Yeah.
So we don't want to see our kids shoveling down food in 10, 15
Yes.
minutes because they had to wait in line a long time.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely not. That's something that through the time we've experienced, like Dr. Menzo had pointed out, that last 5 minutes there was very little eating, if any, done at that time. And no matter what, we never force feed kids. We never force them to rush out. If we again realize that the cafeteria workers are not able to serve in that amount of time with the amount of students we have, adjustments that can be made. But again, we've also spoken to our cafeteria staff, and they don't see a problem with this being the 5 minutes less in time.
Now you're saying seven periods, but in actuality there were not 7 periods. It was only 5.
And then the next
68
Yeah.
minutes long, not 7 periods.
Right, there's 5 the first day, and then the 2 more would carry over into the following day.
Drop.
So you're dropping. I think that needed to be explained, that there's not 7 in one day.
Correct.
And you're saying that the encore subjects will also be 68 minutes long?
Yes, that is correct.
So you're gonna have kids in a PE class for 68 minutes? Is that what you're saying?
Minus changing time, yes.
See, I have a problem with that. I think 6th graders, 11-year-olds, having a 68-minute class time, I think you're asking too much of kids. I think middle school kids need to move around too. And but that's only my personal opinion. I see the amount of work that you did to put into this thing. It's a lot of work. And there's really no easy answer. However, just because there's no easy answer doesn't mean that I have to like it. I don't like the fact that a kid misses a day for a class. That's not easy for certain kids to have to do. Some kids need that continuity every day. I just think this is too much like a high school, and it's not high school, it's middle school.
Shauna?
I actually agree with both those things that you just said. The first being that it's, that's a long time for kids to sit, and so we're not gonna ask them to sit. And we started with professional learning for our teachers to make sure that our instructional practice really mirrors what we know about best practice and what we know about middle school learners.
But let me just interrupt you for a second. These are you're gonna get them instructional, you're gonna help them professionally develop to do this kind of thing over the summer. They're gonna be ready to implement 68-minute classes to 11-year-olds. It's a big change. We all know it's a very big change and a whole different mindset. And to do that in 2 months, I don't know if that's gonna work. I hate to be negative.
No, I understand what you're saying, but as I said in my opening comments, the conversations I've had with teachers this year, great majority of them, if not all of them, have thought at one point or another, geez, I wish I had a little more time. And I don't, as much of a leap that you're saying it is, and it is one, I don't think it's as a big a one as we can give them credit for. Because you're right, there are some opportunities and instructional strategies that can go into it, but I like to think that my faith in the staff at Dag Hammarskjöld, and I know that they can do it.
Just,
You had to say one more thing? You wanted to say one more thing? I'm sorry. I interrupted.
No, what was the second thing that you said?
Kids needing continuity, certain children.
Oh, yes, and so we've talked about sort of how to creatively kind of problem solve that as well. And one of those things was the enrichment block. Could we ensure that a student is, receiving some additional math support if they didn't have math on that C day? Or could we schedule their intervention time on a B day if they had math on A and a C day? So, we are looking at, which students we might need to best support by hand schedule and really trying to be creative about their schedule so that those kids who really would benefit from that continuity and need it will get it.
just if I may also offer, and administrators, please jump in with the specifics, but the schedule, and Cindy was part of this, the schedule was brought to the building level administrative teams with the unions. So the union reps, before it was even shared with the full staff, the union reps at the building were able to vet it through the contract, through getting feedback from the teachers, past that conversation. Then it was brought to the buildings for faculty meetings to have conversation and answer questions, to really kind of kick the tires on it and get feedback from staff. So that passed that. In addition, there was a parent meeting for parents to come out from the middle schools to ask questions and vet it. That also occurred. And in the process, I know there's been professional development that's already started on the concerns that you just expressed happening just over the summer. That's already started at the building level to start talking about how to best utilize in an engaging manner the block schedule. So the team has been very deliberate in rolling this out, making sure that the constituent groups that we believe were essential in terms of the teachers as well as the parents, and then the instructional strategies, which is so key to this, had been considered and have been and will continue to be addressed moving forward, not just throughout the course of this summer, or the end of this year, but also as we look to professional development within the first couple of days of school. But I don't know if I missed anything or if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, no, we actually met a couple weeks ago in this room, joint PTAC, Moran parents and Dag Hammarskjöld parents, and they were very supportive of it, and they too had some great questions. It was a good discussion, but nothing so insurmountable that we can't get over.
Shauna?
Okay, so-
Mike, you all set? Sorry.
I just have a couple of comments, and then I know Kathy has some great questions because I cheated and looked. But so I know that one of our big areas of focus has been the transition from elementary school into middle school and then middle school into high school. And I have to say that this looks like it's going to help because there are students, and Mike makes a very valid point, there are students, especially students with certain learning disabilities, who have a real problem with those rotating schedules. And here's the reality. Once you get into high school, that's happening, right? And so this is kind of a nice way to ease children into getting used to those changes and how we can deal with that. And the other thing is that I personally experienced, because I moved in 7th grade, a similar schedule to what you were talking about with where you have 40 and we actually had 9 periods, not 7, so it was even shorter, and then went to a block scheduling as I think I was 11 or 12. And my personal experience and that of my siblings was that we had a greater appreciation for learning, more fun at school. We got a lot more out of it. And then when we moved back to have to go back to those 40-minute periods, there was a real loss. So I know that the concern was whether or not an 11-year-old is mature enough, I guess, to sit.
More fun
Okay, so no, that's a great question. So reading, for example, right? That's one of my favorite areas is English. What I had found in the shorter classes is that by the time you were done going over your homework from the night before, you had maybe 20 minutes left to.
That's an instructional issue, that's into a schedule.
Okay, but that was consistent across all of your classrooms. By the time you stopped going over all those things and taking attendance and da-da-da-da-da, there wasn't much time for an engaged learning period. What I found with the longer periods was that we still had time to do kind of those housekeeping things, and then you had time for, in English in particular, an independent reading moment, and then we could take those independent reading moments and have open discussion about what we had just read and collaboration, and there was just a lot more that I got out of it personally, and like I said, that was a similar feeling for my siblings, who were slightly younger, to have those longer periods. And I know that when we moved back and we transitioned back into those 40-minute periods, the frustrations I had that continued on throughout high school. So I think an 11 or 12-year-old would be able to handle this, and I think it is going to help with our transitions.
Kathy, you have great questions.
Honestly, it's not a great question. It's not, I had to write it down because at my age, you kind of forget everything, you know, anyway. No, just to go along with Mike's comment earlier about the missing a class every third day, my additional concern with that would be the impact of holidays, snow days, assemblies, and testing that might also impact that scheduling. And I know I've heard, my daughter, I'll tell you, she teaches at the high school, and one of her concerns, or complaints, I'll say, would be those times when she wouldn't be seeing some of her students for several days because of whatever impacts there were on the schedule, you know, because of these various things that could impact the schedule. So it might be sometimes you wouldn't see a student for a full week and a half before you're seeing them again. So I just want to make sure that those things are considered.
So yes, we did consider that. The easy answer with the snow days or days missed for other reasons is that under our current schedule, we go A through G, and those A through G are locked in. So if it's an A day on a Monday and there is a snow day on a Monday, you miss that A day. With the A, B, and C schedule and the fact that we may be dropping periods and you may miss a period a day, we're going to have to look at that a little bit differently. So if a snow day falls on an A day, so let's say Monday is an A day, there's a snow day, we may have to make Tuesday that A day. So this way they don't miss that period of instruction. Those are some of the details that we have to work out when we actually do the scheduling through Power School and that conversations between the middle school staff and administration. So that would address the loss of instructional time for something like a snow day or otherwise. What you do see up there, that's just a sixth grade student view. One of the things that we mentioned was the enrichment block. When we look at things like assemblies and opportunities where we have to pull students from a class, we currently lose instructional time, you're right. If we need to have a whole grade assembly for a conversation, if we have a presenter come in, whether it be from another high school or an outside presenter for an assembly, we lose instructional time. It's actually doubly impactful on us because when we have to use our auditorium, and our auditorium is an instructional space for our music teachers. So we lose a lot of instruction when we have assemblies. The enrichment block helps that. That's a 65-minute period of time where the entire school is not teaching. So if we needed to have an assembly that involved a whole grade level, it can be done during that time. None of our auditoriums can fit more than one grade level, really, maybe a grade level and a half. So that would separate that lost instructional time. So we'd actually be gaining instructional minutes over the year. It's nothing that you can find on any charts. It's nothing you can find in details, but it's just a lost instructional time that we get back by using the enrichment block more wisely.
One other question, and this actually came from a parent to me today. Concerned about class sizes going up exponentially in the encore classes with the new schedule. Only half the encores will run at a time instead of all running at once. Is that true? Is there an issue there with class size?
We do anticipate our encore class sizes going up, but right now they're at such a low level that impact won't. It shouldn't be a tremendous impact. Some of their class sizes are well below what our core class sizes are. So we're going to get them up to a more natural level, a more instructionally sound level, never above what they can handle as far as classroom space, usable materials, or safety. But it shouldn't be. I'm not sure the word that was used by the parent, massive or exponential, right? That's a long word. It shouldn't be to that nature, but we will see, we anticipate seeing an increase in encore class sizes, which may or may not be attributed to the schedule. It may just be a function of of student choice and maybe a function of some of the other things we have going on.
Okay, and then one last question she asked was an issue with respect to the band. I guess they currently practice twice a week, but now there doesn't seem to be a regular time for that to happen.
As Joe mentioned, that's where the enrichment block will kick in. When it comes to music, there are some moving parts to it. As we stand here before you, we are building the schedule in IT with Karen, and we're in the midst of that now. So when it comes to band, though, there are some features of it that we have to work out. But enrichment is going to be that time where hopefully they can rehearse. We take pride in the performances that our band does throughout the district and the community. So that's that block.
Additionally, we've had our music teachers have been very involved in this process as well, from all the levels that Dr. Menzo had mentioned. And I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, this Tuesday morning or tomorrow morning or Thursday morning, I can't remember the date, the 6 music teachers are getting together to look at how they can offer chorus, strings, band, some of our deeper level music courses within this schedule and not lose that instructional depth they have now and perhaps gain some more instructional depth. And one of the things I think they're looking at is how long can a student play an instrument? How long can a student sing? How will they structure their lessons to get that deeper level of instruction within a 70-minute block of time, or 68 minutes, I should say, 69 minutes, but at the same time, get that whole group ensemble they've been looking for. So they're committed to working on it, and we put our faith in them to make sure that their students are still getting the best instruction that they can offer, or they have offered all these years.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm looking at, and I only taught high school, so Mike maybe can help me out with middle school. So you're looking at a 69-minute class, right? So obviously, especially at that age, you're not going to spend that 69 minutes doing, let's say, content. What now on the plus side, I could see, well, you do maybe half the period, and then the other half activities, to enhance it, to reinforce it. Do you come out at the end of the year short though? So in other words, people I've talked to in other schools that sometimes block scheduling is you're not allowed, you can't cover the same amount of content in a given year because you still have X number of minutes for the year. So if you're spending 30 minutes out of a class time doing actual instruction, let's say 30 minutes doing enhancements, right? You're still going to get, are you going to be able to still do the same content that you would normally do? Because you can't you couldn't teach, I don't even think high school, but especially middle school kids, I mean, you can't teach them for 69 minutes. That's just.
So your question is really about, will they be able to get through the curriculum?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a question I think that happens with a lot of teachers year after year, regardless of the schedule. I'd like to think, and again, we haven't started day one with it, but I'd like to think that with the instructional minutes provided, with the large amount of time that a teacher has, that they can get through it with more fidelity than they can now. 47 minutes goes by really quickly, and it's hard to do that. I think we can get into much deeper understanding and learning with an extended block. As far as the instructional strategies, it's going to take the expertise of our teachers to structure lessons in ways that is engaging. In no way should there be lecturing for 69 minutes. I wouldn't recommend that even for the high school. But at the same time, it's going to take that kind of expertise for our teachers to create those lessons.
Mike?
Nope, that, I can wait or whatever. Though my question dovetails nicely to that segue, but I'll wait.
Roxanne? Come on, Roxanne.
You mentioned band. What else would kids take? And I would also like you to go back to that first slide. I have all my numbers down.
So as far as enrichment goes, enrichment is not meant to be a class that they take. It's a period of time when they can meet with any teacher in the building on anything that is relevant to that student. So if a student missed a math class for just a general sickness absence, they can schedule a time to meet with their math teacher to make up whatever they missed so they don't lose additional classroom time trying to catch up with their peers. If the teacher will be free. Everyone is free during the enrichment period. The entire building is not in an instructional block during that period. So there's all 65 staff members per building, certified staff members, plus paraprofessionals, paraeducators are available.
So if I don't need help in that, I don't need help in anything, what do I do?
You can, it depends, there may be, there, absolutely. Scheduling has a ton of levity all on its own, but you can add as much as you please. It depends on what's being offered in the building. There are some teachers that are planning on offering their clubs during that time. There are some teachers that are looking at student passions and maybe letting that happen. There are art teachers that there are certain courses in art that we don't offer, maybe comic strip writing or comic strip drawing that they can offer to our students. Or there's some students who will just use it as a study hall. Time to catch up on something, time to study for an upcoming test, time to finish a project, time to collaborate with a group member on a project that they couldn't do from home or somewhere else. So it really remains to be seen exactly how it's to be used, but it allows for the entire building, all our students to access all of our staff members in some way, shape, or form, and everybody will be engaged with students during that time.
In further responding to that, could you just make a comparison? Because I think, again, the board not having as in-depth of understanding of the present schedule, how does the flex work? Is it similar, different? Because we already have a flex period, so if you could explain that in relation to this.
Now, this flex period is 70 minutes long.
Right,
But
the
there-
current flex we have right now is very much non-academic time. It's a study hall for all intents and purposes. 45 minutes twice every 7 days, a student has a study hall with their homeroom teacher. On occasion, we use that time for makeup. I can't say it's not used by our teachers as well as humanly possible, but because it's only one grade level that's off, there's only their core academic team that they can see. Encore teachers are teaching during that time. The other core teachers are teaching during that time, so clubs can't be offered. Enrichment activities, it's limited what can be offered. Right now, our band pulls from that time, so there's not really a lot of whole group things we can do with students. Certainly can't run assemblies or any sort of standardized assessments that we do. So right now, it's a huge gain from what is currently flex and sort of a wasted study hall period for the majority of our students. Does that sort of hit upon what you were looking for, Doctor? Okay, thank you.
Not necessarily what I was looking for, but that's okay. I have to say, one of the real positive things about this is that kids will be getting 68 minutes of social studies and science.
Which would only be made better if you taught it.
But let me tell you, you go ask any 5th grader, 4th grader, 3rd grader how much science and social studies they are getting down in their classrooms, it will make your stomach turn. And I think this is probably the only positive thing out of this, because finally, and I'll say it, my grandchildren will finally get social studies and science. And you know what? It depends on the teacher too. There are some teachers who will spend a little more time on it than others, but that cuts into their math or language arts. But this is the only positive thing I see about this. But still, 68 minutes is a long time for an 11-year-old. They have to be entertained. And that teacher's got to be able to do a myriad of things during that 68-minute period of time. Like you said, they can't just lecture. They have to have learning stations. They have to have whatever. It's a lot of planning. Let's think about the teacher on the other hand too. It's a lot of time that they have to plan for that 70 minutes to keep those children entertained one way or another. And I also think it's difficult in a PE class or an art class or a music class. I mean, I think it's more difficult in the encore class.
I mean, I just want to say, just because we're moving towards this mastery-based learning, right? And individualized learning. But think about this, and I'm sorry, something like this excites me a little bit, because what I see is not how am I going to keep these kids engaged the whole time, because I don't see a classroom where I'm sitting as a student and listening to maybe a Socratic class, like teaching method. I'm seeing kids at different stations, learning at their own level, being able to come back. We have that whole redo, retake policy. Now I have time where this group of kids who are, I don't know, doing something over here and this group is over here, but I'm able to sit and meet with my student who needs to do a redo, retake. I'm just seeing a lot of opportunity here that wasn't afforded. You know what? It's not easy. Teaching is not easy, but teaching for 40 minutes isn't easy either. And I think that if I was a teacher, right, I'm sure that the reason I went into teaching was because I want to see kids grow and learn, and I want to have an impact on who they're going to be. And I think that, and I'm not a teacher, but I could just, this is, I guess, my feeling on it. I would be excited by this too, to see an opportunity to use my creative self and have a different way to express to students how to learn. And I'd see opportunity here, not the burden, because as a teacher, I guess teaching wouldn't be a burden.
Either. And I could see growth in a 45-minute period just as much as I could see one in a 6.5 period. That's not the point. And I concerned about an 11-year-old child in a 70-minute class, especially if a teacher's not going to take the time to make all these different, we're all human.
Oh, yeah.
And some of us are very hard to change.
That's true.
And I see it every day in our classrooms,
Yeah.
that some teachers will not change, and it's very hard to move to that new way of thinking.
Absolutely.
And to do it in 1 year like this, I don't know.
But I don't know
I
if,
just want to express my opinions, you guys.
and Mike, I'm not trying to talk over your opinions or not recognize them, and I'm sorry I should be raising my hand and stuff like that. But I just see it as we're all ready, and I don't see it as being instant, because we've been doing this mastery-based learning stuff for a while now. This is the direction we're moving.
You can't make it sound to me like this is the basis for this is just mastery-based learning.
It's not. That's not what I'm saying.
Yes, that is exactly.
But no, I'm not.
It's not that.
That
It
was a
should not be that.
definitive kind of thing. That wasn't my point. Is that the connection with mastery-based learning is that we're moving towards individualized learning, and this provides the opportunity or a greater opportunity for that. Not that the two were. Thank you. I wasn't looking for a definitive link.
And,
Okay, there-
and I think looking at this in terms of a teacher perspective, as a former middle school social studies teacher, just want to throw that in there, hey, is that there are 3 benefits that every teacher is going to feel. And
The only reason
I take any compliment that I can get. So I think as a teacher, there are 3 positives to look at for this. Okay, the one is that the increase in collaborative time, which as a teacher, I would be hard pressed to find a teacher who doesn't feel the need for more collaborative time to either work with a grade level teammate, to work with a content level teammate, to work on things like coming up with more effective strategies. As a teacher, you also now have the ability to have a block of time every 3 days to work with kids on additional skills, whether it be helping them with what they're struggling with or to find a time to challenge students. Then on top of that, I think as a former teacher, I think every teacher is always looking for that way to conference with a student individually. Now, if I've got 45 minutes and I want to have a minute conference with all my students, I'm probably looking at a minimum of 25 minutes I'm going to spend. If I've now got a 70-minute block, I know that I can build into my instruction that individual time to provide specific feedback to kids when I'm teaching them skills. And not to link this directly to MBL, but when we start talking about mastery-based learning, that feedback on individual skills and standards is going to be key. So I think that while this isn't going to be something that, like you said, this isn't going to be, bam, they got it, let's move with this, I think we've built things in with this schedule to provide extra collaborative time, extra time with students, that's all going to have a positive impact upon student outcomes.
And please know, this isn't something that we feel like we're putting on teachers. This largely came out of the fact that teachers were begging for more time. You can talk to our departments, they're overjoyed. Speaking as a former 8th grade language arts teacher, just this time last year, I can sympathize. They're kind of the ones who are asked to do ERLA and STAR. And by the way, make sure that MBL is happening and all these things. And especially the newer teachers who you would think are more ready for this, look at me and say, we can't do all of that in 45 minutes, 42 minutes, 41 minutes by the time, the students get in from their lockers. So I do hear your point that it is going to be a lot of planning, but at the same time, we don't have anyone in our schools who is sitting and lecturing for the whole period. This presents an opportunity to kind of deepen their learning centers or continue that fishbowl conversation or whatever it is that they're doing. Every class that I've been in this year, at the end of the class, the teacher wasn't like, oh man, thank God this class is over. It was, we're deep in this conversation, or we're deep in this activity, or the kids are like finally, really into it. Oh, all right, pack up, you gotta go to your next class. So again, I do hear your concern, but I really think that teachers are more excited about this than nervous about this. Just speaking as somebody who's in the building every day.
And see, so as Ms. Bellizzi was trying to show everybody, on occasion there's lost instructional minutes to technology malfunction. So now I have 68 minutes to account for the lost technology time. And occasionally technology is as great a job as Karen and her staff do. Technology breaks down.
So I know there was a lot of hands. Roxanne's, I think, is up first.
Okay, so I just want to make a comment first. I don't know, are we calling it a flex period or your enrichment period? I love that notion, and I think one of the hardest skills, and certainly I witnessed it through my own children, I continue to witness it, is self-advocacy. And that's not a skill that naturally comes to teenagers or young people. And anytime we can, I believe, we can encourage them to self-advocate and seek out whatever it is they need or want every third day in that enrichment period. And obviously, it's going to take a lot of, nudging along and helping them to understand how to best utilize that time. Any opportunities we can encourage that, I think is a plus. It's not a skill that naturally comes to any young person, really, as a general rule. So I like that notion. So I have, you kind of skirted around it. We talked a little bit about teacher support back in 2015. So do you feel like you have a greater comfort level for teacher support in this, practice, that it's the best that we could come up with for Wallingford, and you generally have support?
Yeah, I think
Generally.
so.
You
Generally.
like that word?
Exactly.
Couldn't resist.
Yeah, the conversations that we've had with staff, they are excited about it. That they fully understand the extension of the class time,
Yeah.
And what will be before them, but they're pretty positive
Yeah.
about it. To your point before about the enrichment block, that's going to follow them too, because it mirrors what the high school has with
Right.
Office 45 and planning that executive functioning.
And I just hate to see, I think at the high school level, I don't think even at that level, high school kids utilize that time always in the best means. So if we can start getting to think about that at middle school, the hope being that by the time they reach high school, that it's not a shock to their system, they have this free time, but what the expectation is how to utilize that time.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we can instill that. But
Yeah, I think you can.
when it comes to this generation, one concern time and time again is that students really don't know what to do with downtime.
Yeah, it's a
and
good
they're
thought.
they're lost.
Yeah.
They almost, it's
Right.
anxiety producing. So that's something that our culture and our society has kind of promoted. To that end, having 45-minute periods multiple times every day almost creates that impulsivity, and they're impulsive as it is.
Sure.
So I think there's a benefit to the fact that they have to focus and deeper concentration on things.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing. Yes,
do too.
Mr. Votto, you're right. As far as the asking an 11-year-old to focus that long, but they can do it. I think kids surprise us, and they can
To have an
meet the
iPad
challenge.
pod in front of them, yeah, they could.
So.
But not the whole.
This is my
But not
time.
the whole
You already
period.
had your time.
No, I haven't.
So, on a more, just because this is the way I'm thinking, I see it right now. This is shown on our agenda as a presentation. Is there? Obviously, there's no vote on this tonight. Is there
There's-
any vote? Is
No,
there any
you
change?
remember
is this,
board deals with policy.
I
This is not a
understand.
policy, so.
Asking the question.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify.
Yep.
So just because this is a presentation, schedules our presentation from
I respect
what we had
that.
heard. So the goal would be just to share this evening, again, because, and again, it's a tribute to the administrative team and all the teachers at the school, as well as the parents who took the time and have been part of this process, that it has gone through the different layers that we've been asked in the past to make sure that we do before coming to all of you. And I believe that the administrative team at central office supports the work that's been done. So
Great.
it's a presentation this evening.
I know that, but
So
I
I'm
just want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
Cool.
And I want to thank you, because I can imagine, this, talk about a gift that keeps on giving. I mean, this a lot of time went into this. At 2015, at what you thought was your good plan wasn't well received. That's fine. So one could get jaded by that, but you guys said, okay, let's figure it out. And you've taken a very methodical, it sounds like, a very methodical, slow approach. And I really wish you guys the best of luck, that everybody embraces it and really utilizes it in the fullest fashion, and it works out. I really do.
Thank you very much.
Amanda, question?
Sorry, just a comment. Yeah, thank you so much for your research and vetting all this. It's I really personally like it. To kind of segue from what Roxanne was saying, I really do like the enrichment block or section very much. But what I would like to see is like kind of like maybe a la carte like menu, especially for the sixth graders, because I feel like the sixth graders might not be as inclined to like say, hey, I want to sing or I want to do this, because some of them might be a little bit shyer, especially getting used to, being, I don't know, at that grade level. I know that, when I was that age, there was kind of those, that transitional period, which is kind of difficult for some. And also, I was going to say, can you talk about the split lunch one more time? I know you had talked about how it would flip-flop a little bit. Can you?
Actually, that idea came, Julie, graciously came to our schools to field questions from teachers and any concerns. And, we made it known to them that it wasn't yet set in stone. It's still not. And one of the concerns, and I forget which grade it happened to be, was by the time that we transition back from lunch, we are probably going to lose some minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And since we are a 3-grade school and we are now in 3 trimesters, could we kind of share that burden? And as an administrative team, we all thought, why not? So it would rotate through. So I might be a 6th grader and my math class might be split for the first trimester. Once the first trimester is over, that class is no longer split. I'm a 7th grader now, I might get the second trimester, my science class might be the one that's split. And then, so on and so forth. We decided not to split Encore, which might be counterintuitive, for kind of practical reasons. If you are in art class and painting, and you leave and go to lunch for 25 minutes, you come back and now your paint has perhaps dried, or if you're in a cooking class and you pop something in the oven, you might need to be there to take it out. So that was one of the decisions that went into it. But we think by kind of rotating through and it only being one of your core classes, it sort of minimizes the impact, at least the best that we can.
And you said the splitting would be by grade? Is that?
Correct.
Am I understanding that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Kathy, you still have a question?
So, was there any consideration given to the feasibility of maybe not doing this 6 through 8, but just doing like a beta testing with grade 8, for example? That would kind of alleviate Mike's concern with the 6th graders to see how the scheduling is actually working out. Is it an all or nothing kind of approach that has to be taken, or can it be? Can you consider maybe doing it one grade at a time?
It really is an all or nothing because we share Encore staff. So the Encore staff teaches all 3 grades. So in order to coordinate their schedules, we had to, and at the same time making sure that every student can get every offering we have in the Encore subjects, we had to do it as an all or nothing.
Okay, thanks.
Mike?
It's okay. Don't worry
Your,
about it.
the prep period for teachers is still once a day?
The prep period is balanced. The way the teacher contract is written is a very unique language, but the prep period is still balanced to the time that they teach. So it's if they teach a 69-minute block, they have to have a 69-minute prep
So every
during that
teacher will have
7-period rotation.
So every teacher will have a 69-minute block every day?
Yes, but
Great.
it just depends on how we're going to break up that block between prep and meetings, but yes.
And as a clarification, Madam Chair, this is just a presentation, or it is a presentation, so we as board members don't get a chance to have any, we don't okay it or not, right?
that.
Is that what I'm asking?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Well, it's not a policy. And to Dr. Menzo's point, it's not a policy, so it's not something that we would vote on per se, but it's an opportunity for us to understand what's going on in our schools.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All set, Mike?
Yep.
Karen?
Since we've had a lot of discussion this year in particular about identification and support of our gifted and talented students, especially in the arts, I think that this model might lend itself to greater in-depth knowledge and instruction offered for those students. I think that would be helpful because we're always looking at ways that we can encourage our students to excel in an area that they're interested in.
Absolutely, we agree.
Just to Mr. Votto's point, because I don't want to convey that, obviously feedback isn't important, but I think that if there is a desire on the part of the board to show support or anyway, I don't think we'd be opposed to a consensus on this. I think that the fact is that and I still believe that the work that's been done by the administrators and the teachers and going through the layers that we would want to in a system have been done. But I think that if you want to offer that, I don't believe that that's a concern, but I guess my feeling is that, again, as the instructional leaders of our buildings, spending more than a year, 2 years on this, needs to be valued, which I believe it is, but also we do need to support them in their decision, because we give them that responsibility. And again, it wasn't something that was just developed in a matter of a month or two. This has been a multi-year process. So again, I respect the fact that the board offers the opinions and they're listened to, and obviously I know that I'm taking notes, and I know for the people up there, so they have them. But I don't want it to be believed that we're trying to do anything quickly or inappropriately, in the sense that we're not looking into considerations of all the different constituents, because that's been done. And I know that that's not been stated by any board members, but that's also for the public listening, that this has been very methodical. I know at central office meetings, we have level meetings once a month. We're like, okay, we need to be certain that this is the right thing. I mean, these meetings have gone on for it would seem like days, because of the fact that they've been so thoughtful, and the amount of Post-it notes and whiteboard space that we've used, or they have used, over the last this year alone has been incredible. So I can't say that enough, that I just feel that this is a true it's in support of the hard work of everyone involved, and that's not just the administrators, but the hard work of the teachers that have looked at this schedule and given their feedback and offered appropriate comments and questions, not just from contractual standpoint, but truly an instructional frame, an instructional lens, which is the key.
Mike?
Sal, I'm not asking for a consensus. I'm not asking for anything special. All I'm saying is, as a board member, I feel it is my duty to ask those questions that I feel that are appropriate. Now, perhaps, and I'm not trying to minimize the amount of work these people did. I understand what it's like. I've been there. I've done it. I've made middle school schedules. I know what the amount of work that's involved, that it is involved in. However, I still think there are some shady areas. I think this enrichment period, to me, it's not clearly defined what's going to happen during that time. I'm not satisfied with that. And there are a number of other things. However, maybe perhaps, and I'm sorry, Glidden, Sean, if this comes out on it. I just feel maybe we should have been more informed as the process was going along. Because maybe some of these comments I could have aired a year ago instead of now, right when it's going to be implemented. And I'm not saying every board member's got to agree with you, and I'm sure you don't, but this is just my opinion, and I think I'm entitled to my opinion. And as an educator, I think I have a little more insight into it. I work with children, and I know what it's like. And it's, to me, ultimately, yeah, it's a great idea. You know, it's always nice to have more instructional time, but I think you've got to look at the whole picture. You know, I don't want to see kids sitting in a class for even 45 minutes doing nothing in a study hall. And you can't promise me that every enrichment period of 70 minutes is going to be taken up by kids doing something or conferencing with a teacher. Folks, it doesn't happen that often. We would like it to happen more often, but we know it doesn't. And it takes the initiative of both sides, or if a parent says they want that to happen. I think it's good time for PPTs. I think it's good if the teachers have the free time. Parent conferencing, team. I think that's one of the best things we've done in our middle schools is teams, our teams. I think an appropriate team planning time is great. I also think it's a good time to conference with parents. So there are good aspects of a thing like this. But again, my main concern is what's best for children. And I don't think an 11-year-old is ready to tackle on this thing. I'm not asking for a consensus. That's just my opinion.
So I think I could speak on behalf of everybody when I say I think it shows your commitment due to the fact that every board member here asked a question, made a statement, contributed to this discussion, showed us your commitment, your interest, your involvement. That for us speaks volumes to what we do and the importance of what we do. And at the same time, I noticed Dr. Menzel writing, I'm logging in some things. It's not August yet, it's not September yet. We still have time to take feedback from everybody and see what we can do with that feedback to make sure that we are, Mike, and bottom line is doing what's best for all the students we have coming through our middle school. So I appreciate it. I know all of us do. And we know you appreciate the work we do. We know your feedback is only to help our students and to make sure we're doing the right thing by them. So definitely thank you all very, very much. Not to say that we've concluded. I know there's a hand raised, but thank you all very, very much.
So Mike, I just want you to know, I hope I didn't come off as saying I didn't value your opinion or your input. Okay. And then, okay, good, because I do. I mean, years of experience, you're very, but I think it would be interesting if this is implemented next year, as you guys plan, to have some particular questions on the climate survey that relate to maybe some of Mr. Votto's concerns, because that will give us feedback from all concerned parties, and then we can then look at it again next year, and that's a really good use of that climate survey. So if that's something you guys would consider.
It's a good idea. Very good idea.
I have one last question. Would it be possible, maybe before the school year starts, just to kind of get like a little update on, where you guys net out with, like that a la carte menu or things that I mentioned and, other board members mentioned, just to see kind of where we stand before the school year starts and before this rolls out, just to see, how things are going?
Sure. Cool. We can do that.
Thank you.
Kathy.
Did you guys have more slides you wanted to share with us, or do we kind of cover it? Because we kind of
think
cut you off
if
in
we,
the past.
we had to have covered everything already. There's no possible way they have anything on those slides that we have not talked about.
We have 27 more slides.
Yes,
but
can
we're
we
going to
get-
cut it off.
Well,
Yeah, we do. We have some time.
We
if
will
you
get,
So
the
could we
board
get
will
the
get a
per-
hard copy.
yeah, the hard copy
The
and
board
the
will get
schedule?
yes, the
Thank
board will
you.
get a hard copy. They, again, like everything else, they were trying to make sure that it was perfect for tonight. So in terms of a timely manner, we just wanted to make sure that it was presented, and then we can get the hard copy and the schedule for your review. I have that as my first note to make sure that you get by this Friday.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good presentation. Thank you. Presentation. All right.
I still don't know why all this stuff is on this agenda. 9:30.
I know.
This is our curriculum TikTok.
I know. I guess maybe they couldn't. Maybe they missed it. I don't know. So can we keep moving? Hello. So
It's me.
the next items are presentation and proposed revised regulations 4118.11, 4218.11, non-discrimination. I'm assuming we can take them all together.
I think so.
Okay. Then
I
presentation.
gotta ask this question. Why
Why
are
is
we
it
doing this
here?
in operations?
Yeah.
Like all this stuff.
Well,
Why are we doing it here?
I could answer the short is that we have a long agenda in June for instructional that we could be here for like 2 days.
Well, I mean, but
So-
last week we had a really short agenda.
Well, originally it was supposed to be longer.
Oh,
And
okay, there were just changes.
For some reasons, we had to break them up, and this one fell here.
Okay.
And
Where
with
in
the-
hindsight, it could have gone last week, but
Yeah.
until the last minute, we weren't.
So next month is gonna be bigger than that?
Yes, the challenge is with policy, and the key thing is, we have all those number of readings that need
Right.
to occur. And in order to get it prepared for the fall for handbooks,
Sure.
and so that's where the
Well, but
policy
even this, the
falls
middle
all
school
over.
schedule,
Yes, well, we, again, as Carrie,
climate surveys.
exactly, as Carrie
that.
said, that yes, last week was supposed to be much longer. And then unfortunately, because things got
worries.
shifted with curriculum writing and
Yep,
such,
it's fine.
we had to do it that way.
So, okay. Go
Sorry.
ahead. That's
We
okay.
can take these both together. These are actually coordinating policies to what you saw last week with 504 and sexual harassment. The district has had non-discrimination as a very general policy, not related specifically to students or personnel. And with the update to 504, we needed to cross-reference with the sexual harassment from last week and non-discrimination. So the existing policy was 25 years old. This brings it up to date. And what I do want to point out, in the personnel policy, which is labeled 6 in the upper right corner, there's a section in section 2 where it speaks to students, and I did just want to reference that for a moment. Even though this is a personnel policy, you'll also notice in the student non-discrimination, it references personnel. They're circular in that way, where they talk about in the personnel policy that no student can be discriminated upon, and in the student policy that no person employed by the Board of Education and otherwise can be discriminated upon. Part of it, the reason I left it in, and I'll leave it up to you to discuss and determine, is if someone is looking for the policy on discrimination, I would like them to be able to see in either one that comes up to their view on the website that it does cover all aspects of student and personnel within our district. So I just wanted to clarify that for you as you read through, and answer any other questions that you may have.
Any comments on discrimination? Yes, okay, Kathy.
Yeah, I just have a general comment, and not specific to these policies or regulations, but actually just in general, and I know there's an answer to this, but I'm not sure that we shouldn't maybe look for a different answer. Names are specifically mentioned in the regulations, and several of our regulations, and people change. The position may not change, but the person in the position changes. I just want to, and I believe our legal counsel was the one who advised us to put the names in.
Yeah, but you have to know who to go to.
Right.
Right, but I was hoping that maybe we could find a different way to accomplish that with respect to pointing the person reading the particular regulation and pointing them to where to go to get the name of the person. This way, when people change, we don't have to change the policy.
I can make a recommendation for that if you would like. In the policy, you have to list the person to go to. So the Title IX coordinator, or the Title VI, Title VII coordinator. On the district website, there is, on every school's website as well, there is a chart of who those people are. Safe school specialists, climate specialists for the district, et cetera. So a recommendation could be to list the coordinator's Title IX coordinator, assistant superintendent for personnel, keep those general, but then link right there to that document on the website, which would give the specific person's name. Mm-hmm. That way, that particular document could be updated if the personnel changes in name, but in the policy itself, the title of the coordinator, the title, whether it's the counseling coordinator for the district, the director of pupil personnel, the assistant superintendent for personnel, would stand. So that could be a recommendation if the board desires to do that. That certainly would make it easy if people left the position and somebody new was hired, that it could be an easy update without coming back to the board.
Well, I would like to make that recommendation.
I would want to point
I'll
out,
second that.
however, any Title IX training that I've been to and any interactions I've had with the Office of Civil Rights at all, it is highly recommended and considered extreme best practice. I can't emphasize that enough, that every single place that you would go where there's anything related to sexual harassment, discrimination, Title VI, Title VII issues, that it should be as simple as possible for the seeker of the information to find the specific person to make a report to, and that you're not considered in compliance or in best practice if somebody has to go digging around or linking here and linking there to find it. So for those reasons, as a Title IX coordinator, I would encourage the board to allow the names to be there. And I know it's not convenient or simple all the time as personnel changes to change those names. Out of interest of what's really best practice, when somebody is feeling harassed in any way, whether it be related to gender, race, or ethnicity, anything at all, I think that those names, it's relevant that they be there and immediately accessible.
Are these the only policies where names are in them?
Without looking at all the policies,
Yeah,
I
you
really
wouldn't
couldn't
really
speak to
know.
that.
I'm not
to
sure.
tell you.
Because
think
I would
these are
agree
the-
with, I think what
yeah.
you said, Cindy, makes perfect sense. You do need to make it as simple as possible. So I would agree that perhaps for these particular types of policies
Right.
or regulations, it's necessary. But I would hope that if we have them in all, in a lot of
Right.
other ones, that we maybe, as we come upon them, investigate the possibility of just linking them to where
The-
they can get the names.
The challenge, and just to piggyback off of what Cindy said, is that not necessarily is the person going to view this electronically. So
Right.
if it's a hard copy, then they can't, obviously
Link
they
to it.
click on the link. So I just would hate to open ourselves up, since we're doing such a great job with the work of Cindy and Carrie to really tighten this process up, open ourselves up unnecessarily to a complaint or a concern.
Yep, agreed.
But I do agree, and maybe we could even ask one of our staff members to do just a quick search of names or such in our other policies to help with that.
Okay, thanks.
Kathy, do you formally rescind your recommendation or request?
Yes, I'll formally rescind my
Okay.
recommendation.
All right,
At
just
least for these
checking.
policies.
Just checking, so we can make it official. Karen?
On number 8 on the agenda, the 5145.3A, you indicate that the school district will periodically provide staff development for district administrators and periodically distribute this policy. What does periodically?
Generally.
Once a year?
Generally, it's annually.
Oh, my God, I'll never live that down.
Would that be once a year? What is periodically denoting?
The policy is always accessible on the website for any employee at all. It's also always accessible there for parents. But training on sexual harassment.
Right, that's what I'm talking about, the
occurs
training.
annually.
Okay.
For all staff. So, I just consider that best practice, and so that does occur annually. However, to put into a policy annually when that's not a requirement wouldn't
Right.
make best sense.
Just in general, I don't even want to say general terms, but just reading through that, I wanted to have a notion of what that meant. So yearly without saying it is
correct.
what it is. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you. So, update on building use task force.
Okay, we did meet on March 23rd, and the goal of that meeting was to review changes in the documents that were based on the input of everyone involved. The first document being the application. There were some issues with that. The second document was the building use checklist, which is a document that's used to verify the condition of the facility after it's used. That was implemented back in 2011 when this was revised last, and it has never been used during that period. So, no, there was some problems with it. We are attempting, I want to revise that. The ongoing thing that I've heard since 2011 is that youth groups especially are not treated fairly. That one group is paying one fee, another group's paying another one, and to me, I try to treat everyone fairly and with respect, and that's just not acceptable. It's not my responsibility, but I saw this problem, and my intent was to try to revise these things and fix that. The other issue with facilities use permits is that this is normally invoiced by a clerical staff member. They should have something in concrete that cannot be changed, and the way it was, the confusion was often based on maybe what a group asked for, and sometimes that's the case. If one group asked to use a grass field with no facilities, there's not even any garbage cans on it, obviously that's one price. When you ask to use a artificial turf field, that should be another price.
Why should that be? I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, you've
Because
used
one involves no labor to maintain, and the other one is labor intensive to maintain. So
Which one's which?
an artificial field is a maintenance nightmare.
I would say grass field's a maintenance nightmare too.
Um,
You have more maintenance of mowing and seeding, and I don't know. I don't know.
The biggest problem with overuse on the turf field is I can't put people on these turf fields during the week because they're being used by gym classes. That leaves us with Saturdays and Sundays. So it's a potential problem because it's used all weekend, and I do have a member of my team now that's willing to actually groom these fields at night in the dark under the lights, but that seems a little extreme to me at this point. It may be our only option because these fields, when they're constantly used like that, they require constant maintenance. This grooming should take place probably once a week. Realistically, we're looking at every 2 weeks. But you know, if it rains or you know, if I don't have personnel to do that, we have to reschedule it. I will be asking the athletic departments to provide that schedule to me when we can do the maintenance on the field. That's kind of a basic thing, and I don't think anyone will have a problem with that.
I just have, I mean, I drive by Sheehan, you can't drive by Lemon Hall really, but I do drive by Sheehan's field, and there's plenty of times that there's not people on those turfs. I mean, plenty of times. So to find out that there's no time during the workday is very hard for me to believe, and I don't drive by a lot during the workday or during the school day, I should say.
It is an 8-hour process.
Okay.
Well, at any rate,
Yeah, just, and it's a little off task, or off topic, but is the artificial turf still more cost effective than real grass? Because I know we're supposed to be, aren't we looking at replacing Sheehan?
Yes, and when they sell you the product, they
Yeah,
sometimes
I know.
sell it based on that, but we know that it's not less expensive to maintain, especially with the life cycle. But when you talk about using a field every day, it's impossible to maintain a grass field.
You don't have enough money to maintain a grass field for the use that you have.
Yeah,
That's the difference.
But also for safety too?
You would have
It's much safer because what happens on a real grass field is the soil becomes compact, rock hard. The only thing that'll grow in it is weeds. That happens. We know from our experience when you're using a field as much as we do, that happens in less than 2 years. When the previous director resodded the field at Lyman Hall, we had unsafe conditions in under 2 years. Soil compaction was terrible. Down the center of the field, the only thing that grew on it was weeds.
But we don't get skin burns or turf toe or anything like that?
On the artificial?
Yeah.
We haven't had anything reported like that.
Okay, but no burns, all right, especially with soccer players.
No.
I just was curious.
The new version,
Yeah, they
of
have
turf
to tear away.
is very soft, and they've improved it. I mean, what we have at Lyman Hall compared to what's at Sheehan, and I don't know what the years difference have been. It's been at least
Many.
15-year difference, 12-year, 15-year difference. I mean, it is just when we walked out on the Lyman Hall field, I mean, it's like it is so soft and so resilient. And I think that what you're describing was some of the concerns of the present. But I agree also, and Mike is shaking his head too, about the grass. I mean, never mind the cost to maintain it, but when you compact that down, it becomes like rock, and that was really what happened at Lyman Hall. It was so hard. I mean, and your issues with students falling and potential concussions, and it was really tough. It was really difficult. And we had the benefit of having ag science go out and work with maintenance, so we were getting out even more frequently at Lyman Hall just because of the proximity of the resources. So, and part of their program. So it is a challenge. But I appreciate the questions because you think that, okay, let's balance it out, but it's really a difficulty.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
To your question about the turf toe, that was in connection with AstroTurf, because when we first wanted to put in artificial turf, I went back and thoroughly researched because I was concerned about injuries to our students. With regard to grooming the field for 8 hours, is that redistribution of the pelletized rubber? What does that involve?
It's cleaning and redistribution. And the equipment that we were originally supplied with the Sheehan field was like a drag broom and rotary lawn sweepers that were tied together with kind of a harness. That equipment actually would be like a 16-hour process to accomplish the goal. So it was a 2-day process. Has since purchased a piece of equipment that does both operations simultaneously, and it can be used at a fairly quick pace. The lawn sweepers, you have to go at the slowest possible speed. If you don't, everything gets ejected out of the sweepers and back onto the field. So we have a much better method now, and that's the method we want to use at Lyman Hall, but the time has to be reserved for that to happen. And I'm fearful that when you set aside one day every 2 weeks, that if it rains or something happens or a guy's out sick, that will not get rescheduled, and it will just put us further and further away from our goals. And the 2 weeks is very realistic because of the amount of use that we have.
I have a question in regards to that. Do you think it would be beneficial to contract that out then so that it can be done at night when the fields aren't being used?
There are currently no services in central Connecticut that do that work.
Of course.
And the investment is pretty substantial. It requires a tractor, the groomer, which is anywhere from 30 to 40,000. And when you look at a contractor, they're going to want to know when you want it done.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to give them a date, and if that changes, they're not going to do it. That doesn't. So whether it's contracted or whether it's in-house, it really doesn't matter. The commitment has to be there, and it has to be firm. That's what we ran into with Sheehan. Guys would try to get out there during the week, and all of a sudden the gym class is out there. It sounds like Joe Corso at Lyman Hall is going to keep gym classes off of the field when we need to get on it, which is major, because in the past, gym classes and curriculum took precedent during the day. So if there's cooperation in that sense, that may ease this a little bit and allow my guys to get out there.
Which I guess brings me to another question about scheduling. So who does the scheduling right now? Like, how does that work? If I wanted to say, I don't know, rent a field, because I host soccer, I guess, or I don't know, pick a sport. How would I do that?
Through the school, and it's the application process. You fill out the application. That is then sent on to the business office for invoicing.
Okay, so it would it depend on the school now. Parks and Rec, do they do it for all the, like, because we have all those leagues, right? Like baseball, we have Wallingford Little League, we have the football team, we have Twist, right? That's a tournament though. And they use our fields. There's a lot of people that use the school fields. So how does that they all individually go to the school, or?
That's normally what happens. That's the process that's in place.
Okay.
There's no central booking organization, and when you look at the different schools, that's kind of impractical, because right now no one knows what every school is doing. There isn't one central information on that. You just
Shauna, as a follow-up, as we mentioned at a board meeting about a month ago, the administrative team at each level has picked a Kaizen event to do in June. And for lean.
Yeah.
And the high school has selected facility usage.
Okay.
And so Mark will be part of that team. We'll be inviting people from Park and Rec. We'll be inviting people from different organizations to kind of look at it from different points of view, because we do have software through School Dude that allows us to have facility management that's electronic and electronic invoicing. Right now, we're still very, very manual in our process. And as Mark just said, there's not a uniform way of seeing, even me as superintendent, if I wanted to schedule it, I have to call the school, I have to, and figure it out that way. But, there are definitely technology advantages that we haven't utilized. And I think that's the whole process that we need to get through. I know in my last district, we went online. Organizations were given access on our website not to actually schedule, but request a schedule. So they could see what was open, what field was open, even gyms, everything, auditoriums, whatever it may be. And then what happened is they requested it. One central person looked at it, either approved the request, they got it back. Then it was automatically set into an invoice. And the minute, literally 60 seconds after the event ended, the invoice was emailed out to the group. So it was all automated, And then there was electronic payment at the time, which we could investigate through the town, or if we had to go through paper payment, we could do that, but it would expedite the process. And I think that's really what the administrators feel that they want to look at, because
Good.
we have assistant principals who really are meant for instructional purposes, doing that during the day. And not that they don't want to, and they've done a great job with it, so I respect what they're doing, and we have principals at schools. We all agreed that was something that we want to look into. So that's what the high school is going to focus on, I believe it's Tuesday, June 20th.
So I think what I'd really like to see, and I love that, the technology use, is some kind of streamlined and cohesive policy regarding fields and their use and the fees. Because this comes up there's not, though. This came up last year where we talked about, well, are we going to charge people? Are we going to not charge people?
No, that's a policy. We already have it. We worked on that, Mike and I, 2011. There's
For
a
a long
policy.
time.
Did I not just hear?
Yeah, it wasn't
I'm
about
confused
building.
then.
The thing is, last year's conversation with the football league in particular was not about a field usage. It was about the maintenance staff that needed to be there.
And that's what.
And so the
yes.
maintenance staff, that's a different conversation because that's contractual through the maintenance and the custodial contract.
I guess here's what I'm seeing it, okay? And maybe I'm seeing the picture completely wrong. But for every event that I host, even as a school, right, we have certain costs that we kind of know are going to be associated with it. So let's say we do our Powder Puff game, right? And for Powder Puff, we need to have 2 custodians on staff, and I'm making this completely up, okay? We need to have a crowd control manager and a police officer, right? Because we know we're going to sell this many tickets. And I would assume that for a practice or for another event, it would be pretty standardized. I know that if you're going to have 100 people and you're going to use the turf field, that you're going to have to pay for whatever it is, right? So what I'm saying is I'd like to see some kind of a formula so that I wanted to rent the field or however you want to call it. I could say, here's the list. Oh, here's where my event falls. This is the field. This is the fees. Does that make sense?
I believe we have that. We also just recently met, and Mark didn't mention this. We met with the mayor, Park and Rec, the fire chief, the police chief, Ed, myself, and Mark, and we went through our high use groups like Vikings football, because they're really the biggest one, and then also the Twist tournament. And we went through and we navigated through what was required. And so what the agreement was that, on our turf fields, that there's at least one maintenance person, and that was the agreement. That's one person per maintenance contract, plus having a facilities person there. The police and fire would be discussing that with the individual groups separately. We did not want to go down that road. They have provided us detailed information through our security and safety committee that meets monthly as the expectations for school district events. But they can't always guarantee how many people are going to be at a football game. And there's always that people leave, and then they might have one big game that there's a lot of people. So we talked a little bit about that. So the cost right now, there is no field usage fee. And for those groups, it's the maintenance staff member that we need to make sure is there. And then we go from there. I know that we continue to look at the fact that that's an added cost to those leagues. That, to be honest, I've just became aware of this recently, that, a lot of these leagues, the fields that they once might have been able to use are no longer town fields, they're not accessible to them. So the fact is that we have to kind of continue that conversation to determine whether or not it's a fair transferal of cost to the group, and maybe we need to look at more collaboratively working with the town to determine whether or not, since they've been kind of displaced, whether or not it's appropriate, because if they were on the town fields, they wouldn't have to pay for the custodial service. So the thing is that if the town, since the town kind of now has put them in our backyard and we have a facility that requires that there, it's not necessarily a fair transferal of costs. So we need to have that consideration further discussed. It literally just came to my attention, and I appreciated the fact that it was brought to my attention. So we need to continue to do that. But we did have a very positive very productive meeting with the mayor it was about 3 weeks ago,
Okay.
4 weeks ago. Everybody that was supposed to be in the room was in the room. It was probably one of the best meetings we've had. Everybody is they're all so focused on the students and on making sure our programs flourish. So I think we're in a good place, but for that chart of resources that are necessary if you sign out or request a building, that is there. We do have that. This was just to make sure that our groups that are our town groups were being treated appropriately, so we didn't put them out of business, number one, or number two, raise the cost so high.
Yeah, because I think that's important because we use the town fields, and this technically, I know it's a school field, but it's also a town fields. You know, that's the same taxpayer base. So, and I don't want to see our costs going up because of union labor fees or whatever the conditions may be.
And
but
there's always opportunity for discussion there.
So-
As we go into contract negotiations again, the next iteration, having conversations there, and there's potential opportunities.
And then the scheduling thing, I know, because we talked about this last year, and we hadn't heard about it since, so, a little bit of a follow-up. I love the idea of automating it and an automatic bill sent out and centralizing it, because right now it sounds like there's a lot of different people it has to go through to get to the end result, and that there's not consistency across town. And I know that one of our focuses as a board has been consistency.
And it's no one's fault.
No, it's not, no.
I mean, we're asking a lot of different individuals, and I think that one of the key things, one of the 7 wastes is flow.
Yeah.
And looking at how do you reduce the workflow. And like you said, it has to go through a lot of processes. So we'll look forward to reporting back to you, most likely either in July or August, because they're going to have their initial meeting in June and then a follow-up with next steps for implementation in August.
Okay. Are board members allowed to go to those?
Okay, you can go to anything.
I mean, you're more than welcome to. We could let the board members know that it's going to be, I can send out a more complete
Excellent.
understanding of that. You're more than welcome to.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I just want to point out that we did that policy 4 years.
2011, I think.
Yeah. We did try to make that very organized, and I thought it was. The person went to the principal of the school, filled out the application. The application went to Patty DeFilio, who I think really had a handle on all this. And she's the one who made the invoice. She's the one who obtained the custodial. I mean, it was all planned out. Now, whether hasn't been a continuation of it, or that's what I'm looking for.
No,
consistency.
it's been consistent, but when you take a look at it, I think what happened is that actually when the business secretary got the piece, I think then what ends up happening and is that yes, the invoice was created. It was then the custodial went to a personnel, and they would assign the custodian. So we went from building to business secretary to personnel, then back to business.
But I think she had the list. She knew where everything was going.
Correct.
We had things where people were being charged different prices to use Lyman's auditorium
Correct.
and Sheehan's auditorium, and
No, it got
All that got
that all
streamlined, I
was
thought.
consistent because
And the process, too,
that
but anyhow.
position that did happen. I think that we're now looking at and you'll note that we're looking at reducing personnel, that we have to look at things a little bit differently.
and the town is also making us use our fields more, is that it? Because we
Correct.
can't use theirs, so that's
Correct.
Something we have to discuss with somebody.
Yeah, well, the issue is, and I'm involved with it, so I know it very well, is the Vikings football. That's probably one of the biggest ones. And, I have kids in lacrosse as well, so I know they use the fields as well. But the Vikings football, they did West Side Field, which was their home field, our home field. And now, there's not a lot of football. There's a lot of soccer fields in town. There's not many football fields. It's the high schools, and that's it. And taking away the one football field that wasn't at the high school now makes us play there, makes us pay, which we didn't have to do before, and that's an issue. And I would recommend, and I have a bigger issue with that as well as Shauna does, that you're basically this people that are paying for the taxes are the town's property, and these fields are the town's property, and we're making those people, and these are not-for-profits that our kids are playing in, the kids that go to these schools, and we're making them pay. And I by no means do I recommend that we take anything away from our educational budget, and that's why it was there. So I agree with that. What I do request as we move forward is what Sal said. We need to strongly look at this maintenance contract when it comes up and figure out a way that our kids and our students and our parents don't have to pay twice to use the fields they're already paying for. So I just wanted to say that, and we need to
Yeah.
look at that. And when we put this in place, you know, you put things in place with the best intentions, and I was here when it was on, I thought it was a great idea. But as you dive into it, you know, I think there's three categories. There's local not-for-profits, which is these sports organizations. There's local for-profits, and then there's everybody else outside of the town. So let's just call them whatever they want. You know, the local not-for-profits shouldn't have to pay anything. The local for-profits, if they're making money at it, they should pay. 100% agree. And then everybody else outside of our town, they should pay. But again, to have our kids, to have our families here pay twice on it, that's concerning to me. And especially when you're getting, Vikings is a little different because they're being forced. Lacrosse has a lot of options, but even if you go to the town and take lacrosse, when you go to the town, there's not a, unfortunately, soccer has dominated. They've dominated a lot of the fields in town, and for some reason, I don't know why, and it's a town issue. It's not really our issue, but it's very hard to pull it away from them, and I don't know why that is, but that's something the town has to deal with. I think we need to focus on how can we change that for our people in the town. That's all I'd ask. So.
Yeah, and thank you, because that was what I was trying to get across, was the double paying, but it wasn't coming out of my mouth.
We got it. Anything?
Yeah, I
else?
just had one more thing that I wanted to make sure that, especially hearing about the maintenance taking 8 hours, I think that whatever schedule we put together, especially with this new field and the amount of money we've spent on it, that we make sure that maintenance kind of takes a little bit of a priority. Not to say that our sports aren't important, but we invested a large portion of taxpayer dollars into a field that I don't want to hear that it's not getting maintained because we're not making Mark a priority. So.
I appreciate that.
And I think Mark, one quick question on that. Are you seeing less usage on the Sheehan fields because we have a Lyman Hall turf?
It would appear that way. I don't have any facts
Has it
really to
split?
back
Yeah, I'd
that up,
be
but it
interested in
seems
that,
that
but-
way.
yeah.
Makes sense,
You would
You
think
know,
you'd cut it in half.
One's at the end of its life and the other one's
I know,
brand new.
I know,
so-
I know, I know.
That's a fact.
It'd be interesting when you replace them both and see what happens, but okay. Just a question. All right, so budget?
Oh,
No, I'm gonna keep them all. It's all for me.
I could use this. Nothing.
Once everybody has one, I can go through this.
I don't know. Gotta come in both ways.
Okay, so when you look at this, the key thing is, I'll walk you through this, the changes start at the bottom. Last month, when we were able to come together, we were able to find and share with you reductions that you all were in agreement with that left us with about $160,000 or so. So if your eye just drops down to where it says object code 400, where it says level fund maintenance, that line is where we ended off last month, as that we needed additional 72,000, plus we had the first two items at the bottom that we needed to account for, or the first item that we needed to account for. So it was about $163,000, if you recall, from last month. Since then, we're recommending the additional reductions that are below the 400 object code, which is to reduce additional central office clerical support. Those positions, there's a position in the business office and a position in curriculum that we'd be reducing at approximately $124,388. Reduce one paraeducator due to enrollment decrease. We are planning to reduce one section of kindergarten at an elementary school, so therefore there's a para that's attached with all the kindergarten classes, so that would be the reduction in force there due to enrollment. And eliminate ag science secretary. So the agricultural science secretary has a part-time secretary. That position would be reduced, and that was a recommendation or based on conversation with the building principal. The addition at the bottom, you'll note that we had to add $13,000 to our budget a little over $13,000 to cover the magnet school expenses for special education that will be transferred to us in the area of Thames, Thomas Edison Magnet School, and Wintergreen Magnet School. So with the work of Carrie Latour and Rob Mancusi, they were able to identify which students and which services based on the schedule that we received. And so we're estimating that we had to add to that account approximately $13,050. So when you look at this basically, if you were to accept our proposed reductions and additions, we would have the balanced budget of the $100,516,328 that the mayor had appropriated, and hopefully will be approved by the town council tomorrow evening. So, any questions?
Kathy?
Sal, how many central office clerical staff are impacted?
Total this year, there'll be 3 reductions. There was one in the sustained service budget of our receptionist who's retiring. One of the clerical staff member for curriculum has applied and was successfully granted the position as business manager secretary, so that her position will be done away with through attrition, through the fact that we're not going to fill it. And then the last position is a payroll position. That person, and Cindy can speak more to that, what's happening with that person.
That person, following the contractual bumping procedures, will bump to the Moran Guidance Secretary. The Moran Guidance Secretary then has bumping rights, but there is an open position that she would go into, and that happened to be her former position that she had just recently moved out of, so she's going back to her old position. So the big shift really is for one payroll clerk here is being moved to Moran Guidance.
Okay.
But there is no unemployed person in the process.
Roxanne?
So I appreciate the fact that you guys took your hits at central office like everybody else. I mean, but I do worry you guys are losing three spot.
And
three
last year
clerical
we
positions.
lost, and last year we lost one.
Right,
in
and
my
I
office.
worry about that.
We're done. We've,
Yeah,
at
I
this
think
point,
yeah, I just worry about you guys being too lean, and I appreciate your commitment and making this effort, but I do kind of worry about that.
the benefit that we had, again, as you all know, is great to have Ed with us this year because we had a different set of eyes on the department.
Yep.
And to be honest, that the decision in the business office, really, we looked to Ed to give us his input, and he was able to provide us that.
And that we can, looking at other areas, technology can take some of that burden
Sure.
off of us.
Good.
One of the
Okay.
things that
I
we
just
and I
worry too much.
we thank you for that.
I mean, I know you want to set the example, and obviously there's other departments and other areas. Everybody's had their fair share of hits, but you guys have really taken it under the chin.
Correct. And the thing that kind of quote unquote sealed the deal, so to speak, in terms of that position was the lean event that we did regarding purchase orders.
Yes.
And reducing the purchase order paperwork
Yes.
and responsibilities, that did provide us the opportunity.
Which is good. I'm glad that you had that exercise and it provided you valuable information that
Correct.
makes sense.
I think that, and I don't know if Cindy, you want to share a little bit about the business manager, secretary, and expectations.
Right, well, one of the things, I mean, as much as we're going to miss Ed, we are bringing on Dominic Barone. He is our, he's here with us tonight as the new business manager. And with the business manager secretary having just retired this year as well, it is a position that really can evolve into something that will match and align more with the technology that we have available today.
Yep.
And some of the processes, Ed and I really looked at them together. We looked at job descriptions. We had the exiting business manager secretary keep a list of her duties. The payroll clerk that we eliminated provided a list of her duties. When we coupled that with the receptionist and looked at a restructure and what needs to be done, what time is left in a day, what can technology pick up,
Sure.
we're feeling like this is doable. So it wasn't a decision that was made lightly by any means. Before
Sure.
Carrie arrived, the previous assistant superintendent for curriculum was also already looking at the clerical support in the curriculum office, and with Carrie's fresh eyes on it as well, that's something that we believe that we can make work. something as simple as the financials of grants was occurring in the curriculum office. Well, the financials of grants can move into the business office.
Okay.
So
Yep. It's a
restructuring,
giving and taking.
there are some logical steps behind it. I would be remiss if I didn't comment, though, on the amount of hits that the clerical union did take in the reduction process this year. And I can't speak highly enough about the graciousness
Absolutely.
with which they received the news, their willingness to look at things through new eyes and to try to help make this work. But this has not been easy on
Yeah, I
that
can only
union. They
imagine.
have been nothing except for
Truly team players.
really exceptional team players, and I can't let that go without noting how
Absolutely.
professional and cooperative and thoughtful people have been in really difficult circumstances for themselves.
Thank you.
Can you explain the para-educator adjustment?
The one at the the bottom, the one from the bottom, it's one paraeducator. It's due to the fact that we're going to be reducing one class of kindergarten, so each kindergarten classroom.
No. it's-
Oh, I apologize. Paraeducator adjustment. That was based on the fact that we actually needed to. We decided based on feedback from our pre-K classrooms that they wanted an additional, that we believed it was necessary for the social emotional learning to add a para to those classrooms, an additional para. So each of our preschool classrooms will have 2 paraeducators. We actually heard this in our coffee sessions with parents in the fall, that they were concerned about para support.
How many kids were in the classroom? 20? Less?
16, but the little ones are,
They should have.
they're active. So that was the para adjustment. So,
Honestly, it's transition times and recess.
yeah,
that-
just to
that
have the
are really,
coverage
really
for
challenging.
bathroom. Well, bathroom, and so we wanted, so that was the adjustment. I apologize.
How many does that add? How many?
This was an ad of actually 2.
2.
Yes. To finish off, so that we had already budgeted, based on the Smart Start grant, to offer the 2 in those classrooms, and then it was finishing off the other 2 classrooms.
Are we still getting that grant?
Yes. Thank
How
you.
many classrooms will we have next year?
We still have 4.
2 at Highland, 2 at NYB.
And that Cook Hill, the others, right?
Cook Hill has 2 half-day preschools plus the integrated, and Stevens has 2 half-day preschools as well.
Sean?
Oh, so I just, I know that we had gotten rid of the proposal for the early childhood coordinator, and that there were concerns from central office about, I'm gonna get the acronym wrong.
NIAC.
The
NIAC.
NIAC, thank you, the NIAC accreditation. It's something we still have to do, right, the NIAC accreditation?
Absolutely.
And now we're reducing more clerical staff. I guess my concern is, and I appreciate all this work that you guys have done, and you really, you haven't touched the kids as far as I can see in a negative way. But how are we feeling about, they're labor intensive, and the reporting's important, and God forbid and I'm not saying that anybody would do it. I'm just looking at the burden on you guys and on our principals to maintain all this paperwork and keep all of our accreditations. Are you guys comfortable, or
Well, I
does
think
my
Carrie could
question make
speak-
sense?
Carrie could speak better to that.
I think moving forward, a lot of the work for NIAC is currently being done. So we have a very good handle on the portfolios that we're creating and what reporting each department has done. Lorinda Weaver has been absolutely wonderful and organized about keeping every department abreast of what they need in terms of items for NIAC. We are ready to submit the end of September, and so we'll be working very hard over the summer to ensure that all our ducks are in a row. And, Lorinda's going to be across the hall.
Okay.
So I know where she is. I will track her down and find her. And, we'll collaborate and continue to collaborate until we submit to make certain that we are all set as a district.
Okay, good. Because it's a lot of work,
It
and
is.
Goodness gracious, you forgot to, I don't know,
Dot and I.
and then they tell you, and then you're not accredited. And it spirals. So I do worry with the.
We also
I'm
have
not going to
some-
call it short-staffed, but
We also were fortunate enough to get a technical support grant from CREC.
Okay.
So they have been supportive, and they will, I believe one of their functions is that prior to submittal, they'll review the
Okay.
grant to ensure that everything is in proper order.
All right.
But I have to say that, again, Lorinda has been phenomenal. The building administrators, Rob Arcero and Vicky Reed, have been incredible, and the teachers themselves. They meet as a group regularly, and then Carrie coming on board, and prior to that, Sean Parkhurst in his role really helping with that. Also, we were in a good place, and I think
Okay.
we continue to be in a good place in that area.
Okay, and I would just like for next year's budget, for everyone to kind of keep in mind, and I know you guys do, I'm kind of saying it more for everyone else, that we're asking a lot at this point of not just central office, but especially of our elementary school principals, because we are adding, we just added full day kindergarten. Now, we have preschool at all of our elementary schools. We are asking for a lot from them, and they have no help. There's no assistant principals. And so that really needs to be taken into consideration for next year's budget when we start looking at where the money that we don't have is going to go.
Thank you for that,
Well, that'll
great
be easy to
message,
figure
that
out.
uplifting message. Sorry.
Any other budget questions? Do you want consensus on this
Yes,
proposed
you would.
budget? I
Yeah,
would
on the
assume
total
so.
budget, so then it would move.
We're
It
gonna
won't
move
go
to-
on the consent agenda. It'll
No,
still
it'll be a separate vote under the operations committee meeting on.
It's a 1.8% increase, and the amount is the amount at the top received by mayor, $100,516,328. And I will be sending out as I did after your last meeting last month, I'll send out an email blast with Karen Bayou's assistance tomorrow to parents as well as staff, as we've done in the past, just to keep them abreast of the reductions. And I do want to thank all of, obviously, I cannot go without thanking all of the central office team for their support. Every single person, this was a challenging process, but there was an incredible synergy in central office around this. There were many conversations, and I do really want to say thank you to all of them. I also, our building level administrators, their hard work, offering up opportunities for reductions is never easy in your building. And it's something, because you grow fond of not just the quality of work of the staff that we hire, but also them as human beings. So this is never easy. And I would also like to say to all the unions, not just the clerical union, but all the unions have been extremely supportive in investigating outcomes. If you recall last year, and I just, again, I apologize, but we, at this point last year, were going over those short-term, midterm, long-term efficiencies. Unfortunately, we've had to address or utilize most of those, if not all of those, this year. So last year's hard work, that I think many people scratched their head and said, why are we doing this? That hard work made this process not necessarily easy because it impacts people, but it made it smoother because there were no surprises to anyone in our organization. If anyone was following along at all, they knew that these things were going to be up for consideration. So now our challenge that lies ahead for all of us is being prepared equally as well for next year, so that again, we don't have parents, staff unnecessarily alarmed and concerned and being given the wrong message or a message at the 11th hour that suddenly things are changing on them. That is not good. We had a very, very appropriate process this year. And so this summer, we will be spending, and you'll all be invited, we'll spending a lot of time in this room. And we're trying to find a week where we can invite people from different backgrounds, different experiences in our town to really start talking about the next stage of adjustments and next stage of moving the district forward while also looking at efficiencies. So increasing effectiveness through efficiencies is our goal. But I really cannot say thank you enough to everyone, every part of the organization, the parents for their feedback, every single person for their effort in this, because I think we are somewhat of an anomaly in the state that while we had a significant reduction, and it's not a badge of courage that we should be proud of wearing, we didn't necessarily have the level of consternation amongst our staff, amongst our families, amongst our students. They weren't sleeping or living with a trap door underneath them, like has been the case in many other towns, just because of the nature of those towns and their financial situations. So I just felt the need to say that, and I, of course, thank you all as a board because you allow us to do what we need to do. And I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
So we had consensus?
Oh, consensus. You need that, huh? You don't want to just vote on it next Monday or 2 Mondays? Roxanne?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
And yes. So thank you. Anything else now? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.